Part 15. The Rebirth of Space, the Lucky Girl from a Farm Family. Author, He Would Fire Every. Chapter 141. Chapter 141 Put Down. Shopkeeper Huang bowed to say goodbye and went to his room. Gu Huayu went to Su Min's room. Junjia stood at the door. When he saw her coming, he bowed to her. "Hello girl." Gu Huayu looked at it and felt unfamiliar, so she asked, "Who are you?" Junjia leaned forward and said, "Young Junjia. I came back with Junji a few days ago." Gu Huayu nodded and asked, "Who is inside?" Junjia replied, "Aunt Wang is guarding inside." Gu Huayu nodded, opened the door and went in. Wang Qin saw her coming in and stood up to greet her. "The girl is here." Gu Huayu glanced at Su Min on the bed and asked, "You haven't woken up yet?" Wang Qin shook his head, "Well, I haven't woken up yet." Gu Huayu stepped forward to feel Su Min's pulse and said, "You go and have a rest, I'll guard you." Wang Qin pointed to the soft couch next to her, "Just lean on me here. If anything happens, I'll wake you up, girl." Gu Huayu looked at the soft couch, nodded and said, "Okay, let's go and have a rest." Wang Qin took a break, and Gu Huayu first wrote and drew at the table, and then took out the silver needle to practice. Su Min woke up and saw Gu Huayu gesturing beside her, and called out softly, "Miss Xiao." Gu Huayu put away the silver needle in her hand, turned to look at Su Min, and greeted with a smile, "Are you awake? How do you feel? Do you have a headache?" Su Min shook her head, "Fortunately, it's not too painful. Miss Xiao saved me." Gu Huayu said with a smile, "It's because you have a strong will to survive." Su Min smiled and asked, "Where's brother Huang? He's back too? I have something to tell him." "You want to tell Uncle Huang that Deng Jiao and Chen Liang have come to Xishan?" Gu Huayu asked. Su Min asked in surprise, "Does the girl already know?" Gu Huayu nodded, "Well, we all know that you can rest in peace and recuperate. We have made arrangements for the rest, so everything will be fine." But, Su Min hadn't finished speaking yet. Gu Huayu put her finger to her mouth and made a silent gesture, "Shh. Stop talking, someone is coming." Gu Huayu finished speaking softly, turned around and blew out the lamp on the table. Su Min listened carefully but heard no movement. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Gu Huayu calling Wang Qin, "Aunt Wang, wake up, hurry up and tell Uncle Huang to get ready, the other party is coming." Wang Qin was very alert. Hearing Gu Huayu's voice, he immediately stood up and said, "Okay, I'll go right now." Gu Huayu warned, "Have someone put out all the lights in the house." Understood. Wang Qin's voice came from outside the house. Gu Huayu closed the door, turned to the bed and said, "I'm going out in a while and will be back soon. Just lie down and don't move or make a sound." Su Min said softly, "Is anyone here? I haven't heard any movement." Gu Huayu lowered her voice and said, "Listen carefully." Su Min took care of what Huayu said. After more than 10 breaths, she heard faint footsteps. Su Min looked at Gu Huayu in shock. "Miss Xiao's hearing is amazing." "Hush," Gu Huayu reminded again and said softly, "We are already 10 feet away." Su Min listened carefully and found that the footsteps were getting heavier and heavier. Gu Huayu closed her eyes and silently counted how many people were coming. Su Min saw Gu Huayu standing quietly by the bed through the moonlight, so she reached out and pulled the hem of Gu Huayu's clothes. Gu Huayu looked at Su Min, who raised her finger and pointed at the roof. Gu Huayu nodded and said softly, "There are 16 people in total." Su Min didn't expect that Gu Huayu could even hear the number of people, and her eyes were filled with admiration. After a while, the two heard the sound of fighting in the yard. Gu Huayu said to Su Min, "Lie down well. I'll let Junjia come in. I'll go out for a while and come back soon. Don't worry, I'll be fine." Afraid of Su Min's objection, Gu Huayu quickly added. Gu Huayu opened the door and went out, and met Wang Qin, who was hurrying over. Wang Qin grabbed Gu Huayu's arm and said, "Girl, it's dangerous. The shopkeeper asked me to take you away quickly." "Wait," Gu Huayu said. Wang Qin stopped and said anxiously, "Girl, Deng Jiao and the others are coming very hard. If we don't leave, I'm afraid we won't be able to leave." Gu Huayu took out a piece of cartilage powder from the bag, stuffed it into Wang Qin's other hand, and said, "Go, crush this and scatter it to those people." Wang Qin was stunned and asked, "What is this?" "Cartilage powder," Gu Huayu said. "Your Qinggong is good, so it's best for you to do this. Remember, you must let Deng Jiao and Chen Liang absorb it." "Okay," Wang Qin cheered up and immediately let go of Gu Huayu. Gu Huayu stuffed a pill into Wang Qin's mouth. "Swallow, antidote." "Yeah," Wang Qin agreed and swallowed the pill immediately. "Girl, go back quickly, I'm going." Gu Huayu returned to the house. "Who?" Junja asked. Su Min asked tentatively, "Is it Miss Xiao?" "Well, it's me," Gu Huayu responded, jumped back to the bed and sat down, patted her hands and said, "Let's wait here for the good news with peace of mind." Su Min felt the ease in Gu Huayu's words and wondered, "Good news? Miss Xiao, what's that?" "Brother Wang's skills." Gu Huayu reached out to pour herself a cup of tea, took a sip, put down the cup and said, "What? Do you think Uncle Huang can't beat Deng Jiao?" Su Min turned her head and looked at Gu Huayu in the dark. "Isn't this true? Brother Huang is not as skilled as his eldest brother, who died under Deng Jiao's iron sand palm back then." Speaking of the death of her eldest brother, Su Min felt a burst of bitterness in her heart. "After so many years, the tragic scene of my eldest brother's death is still vivid in my mind. Every time I think about it, it always hurts my heart." Gu Huayu felt Su Min's sadness and asked, "Were you there at the time?" Su Min replied, "That day, I took Junzheng and Junja secretly to the attic of my eldest brother's study to look for his crossbow. Hearing the sound of fighting in the yard, Junzheng, Junja, I climbed up to the small attic window and took a peek. Seeing Chen Song, Chen Liang and Deng Jiao's gang fighting in the yard, Junzheng and Junja were afraid that I would scream, so they covered my mouth tightly. Just like this, I watched my elder brother die tragically in front of me." Su Min spoke very slowly, trying hard to suppress the grief in her heart. Gu Huayu didn't ask any more questions, and the room was silent. After a moment, Su Min asked, "Girl, do you think I am cowardly? I see my relatives dying in front of my eyes, but I can't do anything about it." Gu Huayu thought for a while and said warmly, "This is not called cowardice, it is bearing humiliation and bearing a heavy burden, and enduring hardships. A man who knows how to bend and stretch will have the opportunity to kill his enemy with his own hands in the future." Su Min sniffed, "Thank you, girl." "Girl, we succeeded," Wang Qin rushed in excitedly. "Girl, are you there?" Gu Huayu picked up the fire stick on the table, lit the candle, turned to look at Wang Qin. "Have they all been put down?" Wang Qin shook his head and replied, "That's not true, more than half of it fell. Deng Jiao fell. When we were going down, the shopkeeper was fighting with Deng Jiao and Mi Chen was fighting with Chen Liang. They were both in the yard. I followed the girl's instructions and crushed the pills and sprinkled them out. Deng Jiao and Chen Liang were a little far away. Deng Jiao inhaled the powder and immediately softened. Seeing Deng Jiao fall, Chen Liang reacted so quickly that everyone held their breath. Therefore, Chen Liang and a small number of people who were further away did not inhale the powder. Chen Liang ordered the people to evacuate, and those who were not poisoned helped the poisoned ones away. Gu Huayu nodded, "Okay, it's not bad to bring down Deng Jiao. It's considered a success." "Miss Xiao can also poison?" Su Min asked excitedly. Gu Huayu replied, "I don't know much." Wang Qin said, Girl, the shopkeeper and others are also poisoned, and they are still paralyzed in the yard now. Gu Huayu took out the antidote from the brocade bag and handed it to Wang Qin. Aunt Wang, boil a pot of water, put the medicine into the water, and give each person a bowl. Aunt Wang took the antidote, leaned forward and said, "Yes, I'll do it right now." After Wang Qin left, Su Min asked, "Girl, what kind of poison did the shopkeeper and the others have? Why are they sitting paralyzed in the yard?" Cartilage powder, to be precise, is a specially made cartilage powder, which is different from ordinary cartilage powder. Compared with other cartilage powders, this medicine is not only more pure and has stronger medicinal properties, I also added a medicine into it. Once inhaled, it will make people weak in their hands and feet. The antidote must be taken within 7 days. Otherwise, you cannot use force or get angry again in the future. Once you exert force or get angry, the bones all over your body will feel as painful as if thousands of ants are eating your heart. After hearing this, Su Min looked at Gu Huayu in shock. Doesn't that mean he has become a cripple? Gu Huayu said lightly, almost. In fact, he is not a useless person. As long as he doesn't get angry and doesn't use force, he is no different from a normal person. Take good care of your injuries and get well quickly. We still have to avenge our loved ones. Su Min asked, will they find the antidote? Gu Huayu thought for a while, shook her head and said, I don't know. I guess they will rush back to the capital. Because the capital has the best doctors in the world, by the time they arrived in the capital, the 7-day detoxification period had already passed. Moreover, they may come back to ask for the antidote. At this point, Gu Huayu paused, and then said, okay, rest a while, I'll go see Uncle Huang and the others. Gu Huayu gave Junja a few words of advice, walked out of Su Min's room, and then went downstairs. Shopkeeper Huang had just drank the antidote, and his body had not yet recovered, so he leaned softly on the chair. Seeing Gu Huayu come in, she wanted to get up and greet her, but her limbs were too weak to move. Girl. Gu Huayu hurriedly said, Uncle Huang, sit still and drink the antidote. Shopkeeper Huang nodded, drink it? Okay, after a quarter of an hour, the body will return to normal. Gu Huayu stepped forward to look at Shopkeeper Huang's expression, and then said. Shopkeeper Huang asked, Girl, what kind of poison is this? Cartilage powder. Gu Huayu nodded, yes, special cartilage powder. Gu Huayu explained the efficacy of cartilage powder to Shopkeeper Huang in detail. Shopkeeper Huang straightened up after hearing this, so, if Deng Jiao doesn't get the antidote within 7 days, he can no longer use force. Gu Huayu responded, yes, if he misses the 7-day detoxification period, the poison will accompany him for the rest of his body. He can no longer use force or get angry, and can only lie peacefully. Shopkeeper Huang nodded excitedly, well, this is good. It's better to kill people than to let him die. It would be too easy for him. Let him lie peacefully, which is better than killing him. Gu Huayu said, Su Xing died under Deng Jiao's iron sand palm, so we leave it to Su Min to decide whether Deng Jiao lives or dies. Shopkeeper Wang's face turned serious, the girl is right, this matter is decided by Su Min. Gu Huayu looked at the hourglass and said, it's almost done. Can Uncle Huang try his luck? Shopkeeper Huang nodded, crossed his legs to try for luck, then stood up, stretched his limbs, and said with a smile, recovered. Gu Huayu nodded, Uncle Huang will settle down everyone, and then go to the study room, let's discuss some things, and ask Aunt Wang and Mi Chen to come together. Okay, girl, go to the study room first, I'll be there soon. Shopkeeper Huang agreed. Gu Huayu went to the study room. Soon, everyone entered the study room one after another. Gu Huayu waited for Shopkeeper Huang to sit down and said, Uncle Huang, Chen Liang and the others may come back to ask for the antidote. Furthermore, the whereabouts of you and Su Min have been exposed, and you can no longer stay in Shishan. You have to find another place to live. Shopkeeper Huang nodded, yes, I will listen to the girl's arrangements. Wang Qin looked at Gu Huayu and said, let's follow the girl's arrangements. Gu Huayu looked at Mi Chen, and Mi Chen immediately expressed his position, girl, you don't have to look down on me. I am my subordinate. Naturally, I will follow my lead. We will do whatever the girl says. Gu Huayu didn't expect that these people would completely trust her, and she felt a little moved in her heart. Since everyone trusts me, I will speak out. Shopkeeper Huang leaned forward and said, girl, please give me your instructions. Gu Huayu stopped being polite and said bluntly, what happened back then must not have been simple. We are still very weak now and cannot stand in the light rashly. Shopkeeper Huang nodded in agreement, I've been waiting for 10 years, not less than a few years. Let's listen to the girl's arrangements. Wang Qin and Mi Chen nodded. Gu Huayu then said, you leave Shishan overnight and leave in 4 directions, east, west, north, and south, and then meet in Hongcheng. Let's live in Hongcheng for a few years, and then go to Beijing. Shopkeeper Huang asked, what about the girl? Isn't she with us? Gu Huayu shook her head, I want to go back to Shanghai village to celebrate the new year. The Gu family has raised me for 10 years, so I have to settle down at home. Shopkeeper Huang thought for a while, nodded and said, that's good, let King Zhu stay to protect the girl. Okay, then it's settled. Go to Hongcheng and don't live in the city. The city is too eye-catching, so stay in Zhuangzi. Gu Huayu continued. Mi Chen agreed, be careful, if there is a Wanyan ship, let's go to Zhuangzi. Shopkeeper Huang asked, let's leave overnight, what will happen to the injured brothers? Gu Huayu said, Master Lu Liu's people are trustworthy. Let them stay in Chang'an restaurant for a while. After the new year, they will go to Hongcheng with me. What about Su Min? Should I go with you or stay with the girl? Shopkeeper Huang asked. Gu Huayu shook her head and said, Su Min's injury is serious and it is not suitable to travel far. He will stay and we will send him to Miwen later to recover from his injuries. Come with me to Hongcheng after the new year. After the matter was agreed upon, Shopkeeper Huang immediately made arrangements and left the city overnight. Gu Huayu returned to Miwen at the end of the Zhou period, summoned Lu Guang and Ruanwu from the darkness, and asked them to follow Shopkeeper Huang to Hongcheng. Lu Guang and Ruanwu both asked to stay. Girl, Mi Chen and Wang Qin can go to Hongcheng with Huang Xiao. We will stay and protect the girl in the dark. End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, He Would Fire Every. Chapter 142. Chapter 142, Think Long Term. Gu Huayu wanted to say no, but seeing the firm look in their eyes, she nodded in agreement, okay, you guys stay and live next door to Su Mi, and by the way, tomorrow, you go and check to see if Deng Jiao and Chen Liang have left Stone City. The two of them bowed their bodies and responded. Gu Huayu returned to her room and fell asleep. When Gu Huayu woke up, it was already the end of the morning. Gu Huayu got up and washed up. When Lian Dong knocked on the door and came in, Miss is awake? I'll help you wash up. Gu Huayu smiled at Lonisara and said, how many times have I told you, just call me Xiao, don't call me Miss. Landong lowered his head and said, from now on, the young lady will definitely have maids to serve her, and the servants must not break the rules. Gu Huayu saw that Lonisara persisted, so he let her go. Okay, whatever you want. Landong stepped forward to give Gu Huayu face wash. Gu Huayu asked, is the eldest sister's injury healed? Ling Dong bent her knees and said, it's already done. Sister Cheng Jiao was afraid that Sister Cheng Wan would be too busy, so she went to the shop to help out a few days ago. She has been living there these days. Gu Cheng Jiao was injured, Wang Qin went to Hongcheng again, and no one was taking care of the rouge shop for a while. Gu Chengwan couldn't bear to see the shop close, so she took the initiative to take over the business of rouge shop. Gu Huayu nodded, I understand. Where are the eldest brother and sister-in-law? Have you gone to the shop? Landong shook his head and said, Brother Chengdong has gone to the shop, and sister-in-law Guan has returned to Shangtai village. Go back to Shangtai village? When did you go back? Gu Huayu asked with a frown. Landong took the handkerchief from Gu Huayu's hand and hung it on the shelf. It has only been a few days since sister-in-law Guan came to the city, and Aunt Qin came to the city to take sister-in-law Guan back. It was said that the second sister-in-law Wang at home was too heavy to do heavy work and was too busy with household affairs, so she asked her sister-in-law Guan to go back and help. When Gu Huayu heard this, she probably understood. It seemed that her eldest brother and his family were coming to the city, and Wang was unbalanced and acted like a monster at home. The eldest uncle's mother came to the city to take her eldest sister-in-law back for the sake of family peace. Gu Huayu then asked, What about you, are you okay? Ling Dong bent her knees and said, Thank you, miss, I'm very nice to you. My family treats me more closely than my own family. I've never been so kind to you since I was a child. Gu Huayu said, I'm not asking this, I'm asking you, no one from the Zhang family is here to cause trouble for you, right? Ling Dong lowered his head and said truthfully, a month ago, Zhang Wu and Wu came to the county town and went to the rouge shop to find the slave girl. That slave girl happened to be helping Sister Chun Tang in Huangji. Sister Cheng Jiao asked Mother Lu to do something. Come here and tell me the message, please don't go to the shop. Gu Huayu asked, So, you have been in Miwen and didn't dare to go out? Ling Dong nodded, yes, Sister Xiao Jiao came back and said that Zhang Wu is still in the city, squatting under the willow tree opposite the shop every day. The master told the slave not to go anywhere, just stay at home. Gu Huayu nodded and said, Listen to Dad and stay at home. Where is Dad, are you out or at home? Ling Dong bent her knees and said, Sir, I'm at home. Let me have breakfast and go to the study. I know, let's go have breakfast first. By the way, Su Min is staying at home these days. You can help make medicine and cook for them, Gu Huayu said. Landong responded immediately, okay. I heard that many people in Huangji were injured. Where is Sister Chun Tang? Is she injured? In Rendong's heart, Gu Huayu is the benefactor who saved her from fire and water. Huangji's person was the one who made her feel warm for the first time. Everyone in Huangji's family is closer to her than family members. Especially Chun Tang, his care and love for her are simply meticulous. Gu Huayu makes Lonicera admire her, and Chun Tang warms her heart. After Liao Dong learned about Huangji's accident, his heart was in a state of turmoil and he had never been at peace. She wanted to go to Huangji to visit, but she was worried that meeting Zhang Wu would cause trouble to the people around her. Gu Huayu turned to look at Lonicera and said with relief, Don't worry, Chun Tang is not hurt. Landong breathed a heavy sigh of relief and said, That's good, that's good. I've been worried for 2 days, for fear that Sister Chun Tang would be hurt. I'll go see Sister Chun Tang again during the Chinese New Year. Gu Huayu said, You may not be able to see her during the Chinese New Year. Chun Tang, Uncle Huang, and the others have left Xishan. Landong asked in surprise, How long did it take? I haven't heard of it. I left last night, Gu Huayu replied. The disappointment on Ling Dong's face was visible to the naked eye, then I won't be able to see the shopkeeper and the others in the future. Gu Huayu couldn't bear to see her lonely look and said with relief, That's not necessarily the case, I can't tell when we will see you again. Landong suddenly thought of something and looked at Gu Huayu happily, What do you mean, miss? Gu Huayu put her finger up to her mouth, and then said, Just know what you know in your heart, don't say it out loud. Landong nodded repeatedly, Thank you, Miss, I understand. Gu Huayu had breakfast and went to the study. When Gu Dichang saw Gu Huayu come in, he put down the book in his hand and said with a smile, Xiao is here, come and sit down. Gu Huayu sat down, and Gu Dichang continued, there was so much going on yesterday, I forgot to ask you, why didn't Brother Lin come back with you? Gu Huayu told Gu Dichang about setting up Zhuangzi in Hongcheng. Gu Dichang was so frightened that he asked, building a village in Hongcheng? This. As soon as Gu Dichang finished speaking, he realized that he had lost his composure, so he stopped speaking. Gu Huayu explained, I have calculated that if the things produced in our Zhuangzi are transported to Hongcheng, it will require a lot of manpower and material resources on the way back and forth, as well as the time lost. These are all costs. It is better to transport them to Hongcheng, set up some farms and plant them nearby. Furthermore, I want to avenge my father and mother, so I have to gradually manage my own power and cannot always hide in Xishan. And Hongcheng is a good springboard. Gu Dichang nodded and said, that's the reason. There is no need to tell my family about this for the time being. When they asked Lin Gear, they said that they rented a shop in Hongcheng and he took care of it there and couldn't come back for a while. Gu Huayu glanced at Gu Dichang gratefully, thank you, Dad. Gu Dichang smiled and said, silly girl, what's there to thank you for? My father's ability is limited and he can't help you much. You still have to walk the road ahead on your own. Gu Huayu said, my father has helped Xiao a lot. It's the new year and Nanshan Academy is not on holiday yet. Gu Dichang replied, we have been released. Brother Liang and Brother Gui returned to Shangtai village the day before yesterday. The family house has been built, and your grandfather has found someone to look at the progress and plans to move in on the 26th of the 12th lunar month. They went back first to help clean up. Oh. When does Dad plan to go back? Gu Huayu asked. Gu Dichang sighed, I plan to go back today and tomorrow, but something happened to Huangji. We can't leave at this time. 10 years ago, it was first Guanqi Su who rescued me, and then Brother Huang who rescued me on the way back home. If not for them, my life would have been lost long ago. After speaking, Gu Dichang looked at Gu Huayu and said, Xiao, don't you think that my father is a ruthless person who is greedy for life and afraid of death? Gu Huayu immediately shook her head and said, my father has misunderstood. My father has been upright in his life, attaching great importance to love and righteousness. How can he be a person who is greedy for life and afraid of death? Facing Gu Huayu's praise, Gu Dichang said with some embarrassment, it's hard to say that I am above board, but my dad thinks he is worthy of the words love and justice. Time flies, and a person's lifetime lasts for decades in the blink of an eye. With my father, although he was not named on the gold medal list, he could not prosper in his official career. But my father has always practiced the benevolence, wisdom, etiquette, righteousness, and trust respected by scholar bureaucrats. Gu Huayu nodded hurriedly, yes, my father values love and righteousness the most. Gu Dichang asked, Xiao, have you already started planning for revenge? Gu Huayu shook her head, not yet. Huasu has taken over Lunjing Guard for 10 years, even if his father's people didn't listen to Huasu. But in 10 years, Huasu can also create a new Dragon Shadow Guard. My current strength is too weak. If I seek revenge at Huaxu at this time, I will undoubtedly be throwing an egg against a stone and falling into a trap. Gu Dichang thought deeply, well, Xiao has thought carefully about this matter. This matter must be considered in the long term and cannot be rash. Yes, Uncle Wang's whereabouts in Xishan have been exposed. We can't stay in Xishan. Last night, Uncle Huang and his friends had already left, Gu Huayu said. You left overnight last night? Where is the city gate? Gu Dichang asked in surprise. Gu Huayu replied calmly, find someone to get a traffic order. Oh, I understand. Where are the injured guys? Where is shopkeeper Sui Er? He also left with him. Gu Huayu shook her head and said, Su Min is in Miwan. He came with me last night. The rest of the people will make other arrangements and wait until they recover from their injuries before leaving Shishan. Gu Dichang nodded and did not ask in detail. He just said, let shopkeeper Sui R rest here to rest in peace. I will take Xiao Xiao, Xiao Wan, Chengdong, and the others back to Shanghai village in a while. That's not necessary, it's the new year and the shop is very busy. The eldest sister and the second sister are staying over there these days. There is also the eldest brother, who also lives in the shop. They don't know much about the family affairs. Besides, today is already 20, and in 6 days it will be the day for the family to move house, and they will naturally go back then. Gu Huayu took the words and said. Gu Dichang nodded, okay, that's fine, just let nature take its course and not do it deliberately. What about me, should I stay in the city for a few days and go back with you, or should I go back today? Gu Huayu thought for a while and said, my father has nothing to do in the city, so let's go back today. Xiao and the eldest brother and eldest sister will return on the 25th. Gu Dichang nodded in agreement, okay, I'll go back first, and you guys will come back in a few days. Gu Huayu came out of the study and went directly to Su Min's yard, telling Lu Guang to secretly Gu Dichang back to Shanghai village. After Lu Guang left, Gu Huayu entered the room and saw that Su Min was not awake yet, so she asked softly, how long has he been asleep? Junja lowered his voice and replied, Mao Mo just fell asleep. Gu Huayu nodded and quietly exited the room. He told Junja and Ruanwu, let him have a good rest and don't disturb him. If he wakes up, give him medicine first, and then wait for him to eat after a quarter of an hour. A handsome man bows down to respond. After the explanation, Gu Huayu returned to her room and put on makeup before going to the rouge shop. Gu Huayu did not go through the front door, but went around to the back alley and raised her hand to knock on the door. After a while, Lu Ma came over and opened the door. Who are you looking for? Lu Ma looked at Gu Huayu and asked. Gu Huayu pursed her lips and smiled, then replied, Lu Ma, it's me, Gu Huayu. Lu Ma opened her eyes wide and looked around, and asked in disbelief, are you the boss? Gu Huayu nodded, well, it's me. Lu Ma stared at Gu Huayu's face and asked, my boss, what's your face? Gu Huayu walked towards the yard and replied, it's nothing, I just put on makeup. Are there many people in the shop today? Where are the eldest sister, the second sister and the others? Are they all busy in front? Lu Ma closed the door and replied, business is very good these days. There are many people coming to the shop every day. The eldest and second ladies are always busy in the front, and they come here alternately to eat. Gu Huayu nodded and said, I understand, go ahead and do your work. I'll go to the front and take a look. Lu Ma bent her knees and stood up. Then she thought of something and asked, Master, are you eating lunch here today? Gu Huayu shook her head, I won't eat here, so you don't have to cook my lunch. Gu Huayu went to the shop and saw Gu Chengwan packing bags for someone and Gu Chengjiao collecting money. There are still many customers in the shop waiting to pack and pay. Gu Huayu walked to Gu Chengwan, raised her hand and said, you can check out here. Gu Chengwan and Gu Chengjiao heard Gu Huayu's voice and looked at her in unison. Gu Chengwan is lucky, she has seen Gu Huayu's makeup before. Gu Chengjiao saw this for the first time and asked in shock, are you Xiao? Gu Huayu smiled at Gu Chengjiao and reminded, sister, collect the money first. Gu Chengjiao came back to her senses and said, oh, okay. Gu Huayu lowered her head and glanced at the things pushed over by the woman in yellow, and quickly reported, 3 taels of silver. Then she packed the things quickly. The woman in yellow came over after paying. Gu Huayu had already packed the things, handed the bag to the woman in yellow, and called the next one. 3 taels and 8 pieces of silver. 2 taels and 5 pieces of silver. With the help of Gu Huayu, the speed is much faster. After the three sisters dealt with the wave of people, Gu Chengwan waved her hand and said, "It's so good today that I have Xiao to help me. Otherwise, I would have been busy until noon again." "Xiao, you settled the accounts too quickly." Gu Chengjiao said with a smile, "Whatever makes Xiao unhappy? Look at her nimble hands and feet, and she wraps it up quickly and well." Gu Huayu pursed her lips and smiled, and said, "This kind of packaging is too time-consuming. If the paper bags are made in advance, it will save a lot of trouble." "That's right. There weren't many customers before, so we always made fresh paper bags. If we make the paper bags first, it will really save a lot of trouble," Gu Chengjiao said. Gu Huayu looked around and said, "You guys get busy first, I'll find someone to make paper bags." Gu Huayu turned around and returned to the backyard, and told Malu, "Malu, go and help me find 3 or 5 women who are skillful." Lu Ma stopped what she was doing, looked at Gu Huayu doubtfully, and asked, "Girl, are you making clothes?" Gu Huayu shook her head and said, "No, I want someone to make some paper bags. It's very simple. Just do it and watch." With that said, Gu Huayu showed Lu Ma a demonstration. After a few moments, Gu Huayu placed the finished paper bag in front of Lu Ma. "I will provide the raw materials for such a paper bag, 5 for a penny. The more you make, the more you will get, and the account will be settled on the same day. Is anyone willing to make it?" End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 143. Chapter 143 Destiny. Lu Ma smiled and responded, "Yes, of course. It's much better to do this on a cold day than washing people's clothes. I'm going to look for someone now." "Master, do you want 5 people? Can 2 people do it?" Lu Ma rubbed her hands and looked at Gu Huayu cautiously. Seeing that there was something wrong in Lu Ma's words, Gu Huayu asked, "What's wrong?" Lu Ma lowered her head and replied, "The man's surname is Zhang, in the house opposite our back door, and his name is Zhang Dongsheng. Zhang Dongsheng got a strange disease 2 years ago and cannot do anything. His family relies on his wife to wash clothes for people. His daughter-in-law and the old slave are from the same family, also named Lu, and called Lu Ji. There is a girl in the family who is as big as the boss, named Zhang Dia, and a 7-year-old son named Zhang Dazhuang. When it got dark yesterday, the old slave went to take out the garbage and saw Dia and Dazhuang at the intersection. The old slave asked the siblings what they were doing at the intersection in the cold weather. Dia didn't say anything. Dazhuang said to wait for his mother, saying that his mother went to the market to pick vegetables. The old slave asked carefully and found out that the willow branches had not been harvested for several days. Alas, as the Chinese New Year is approaching, this family cannot afford 3 meals. The boss is in need of manpower here. Can the neighbors in the street give the work to the mother-in-law? The 2 sisters of Willow Branch also endured hardships. On a cold day, they had to soak their hands in cold water for most of the day when washing clothes for others. Their hands were sore from the frost. Alas! After Lu Ma came to Su Xi and Rouge shop, she always walked in and out through the back door, often coming face to face with Willow Branches. We became familiar with each other after going back and forth. After learning about Lu Ji's situation, Liu's mother sympathized with Lu Ji's experience from the bottom of her heart. Now when I see that my boss is looking for someone to do some work, I immediately think of Willow Branch. Gu Huayu nodded and said, "Okay, you go and tell them, 1 article and 2 paper bags, see if they are willing to do it." Gu Huayu has always been soft-hearted and cannot bear to hear such miserable and helpless things. The wages of 1 penny and 5 paper bags became 1 penny and 2 paper bags. Thank you, my boss. My boss is kind-hearted. Liu Zi and the others must be very grateful to my boss. After hearing Gu Huayu's words, Lu Ma bowed her knees to Gu Huayu with joy. I will call them over now. After saying that, Lu Ma walked quickly to the back door. After a while, Lu Ma pushed open the door and came in with Lu Ji and Zhang Dia. Lu Ji was wearing 2 single coats with several patches on them. Her hands were tucked into her sleeves, her body was trembling slightly, and her face was a little blue due to the cold wind. Zhang Dia was wearing an old cotton-padded jacket that didn't fit her. The jacket was too big, so she tied it with a strip of cloth around her waist to make it fit more closely. The sallow and thin face looked at Gu Huayu secretly with a pair of big, frightened eyes. Lu Ma bent her knees and said, My boss, these are Sister Lu Ji and her daughter Dia. Sister, Dia, come quickly and give me a present for my boss. Lu Ji took her daughter to the court and bowed her knees to Gu Huayu. Seeing that the willow branches were trembling with cold, Gu Huayu said, No need to be polite, just go and sit in the house. Lu Ma greeted me with a busy smile, Okay, sit down in the room. Gu Huayu entered the house, sat down at the top, and told Lu Ma, add another charcoal basin. Lu Ma said yes again and again, took 2 steps back and turned around to go out. Gu Huayu pointed to the chair next to her and said to Liu Zi and her daughter, sit down. Lu Ji bent her knees and thanked her, pulling her daughter to sit on the chair tremblingly. Gu Huayu looked at the reserved mother and daughter, without saying much, she directly picked up the paper on the table and said to them, I need to make some paper bags here. I will do it once and you will learn it carefully. If it is done successfully, it will cost 2 for 1 penny, and the accounts will be settled every day, as much as the work is done. Willow Branch nodded repeatedly, okay. Gu Huayu looked at the mother and daughter and said, you can sit closer. Lu Ji and Zhang Dia moved their chairs forward, Lu Ji sat down, and Zhang Dia simply stood. Gu Huayu held the paper in her hand and folded it while speaking. She spoke very slowly and acted slowly, explaining the steps 1, 2, and 3. At the end, Gu Huayu asked, did you remember it? How many steps are there? The mother and daughter nodded at the same time, and Zhang Dia replied, it takes a total of 6 steps to go back to the master's house. Gu Huayu nodded, took 2 pieces of paper from the table and handed them to the mother and daughter, you guys try it? Zhang Dia looked at Gu Huayu, looked at Lu Ji, and reached out to take the paper from Gu Huayu's hand. Gu Huayu looked at Dia's swollen and shiny hands and encouraged, don't be nervous, you'll be ready to make 2 by yourself. Willow Ji leaned forward and said, thank you, boss. Gu Huayu was watching from the side, and when he saw what they had done wrong, he corrected it. That's not the case here. You have to turn back and stick it here with glue. Yes, that's it. Lu Ma came in with a charcoal basin and saw Gu Huayu teaching Lu Ji and her daughter step by step. She put down the charcoal basin and came over, standing by the side to follow her example. Lu Ji and her daughter learned it carefully and were skillful with their hands. After a while, they were able to complete it on their own. Gu Huayu took a closer look at the finished product and nodded with satisfaction, well, it's well done. Just do it like this. Don't be sloppy. I'll come to inspect the goods when the time comes. By the way, I can take care of your lunch. Lu Ji hurriedly put down his work, stood up and bowed deeply to Gu Huayu, thank you, boss. I and my daughter will do their best to make every bag, and will never cheat or pass off inferior goods as good ones. The slave family is very grateful to the master for giving the slave family the opportunity to make money, and it is true that they can't hide it. The slave family has not received any work for several days. Lu Ji said with a choked voice as he wiped his tears with his frostbitten hands. Zhang Dia saw a Niang crying, silently stepped forward and grabbed the corner of Lu Ji's clothes, raised his head and looked at Lu Ji with tears in his eyes, and called softly, "A Niang." Lu Ji lowered his head and looked at his daughter beside him, raised his hand to touch her daughter's head, and said, "Da ya, bow to my boss." Zhang Dia obediently bowed deeply to Gu Huayu. "Thank you, boss." Gu Huayu stepped forward to help Zhang Dia up and said warmly, "No need to be polite, no need to waste time, just do it well." Liu Zi and her daughter sat down to work. The room was warm, and Zhang Dia's frostbite began to itch, so she couldn't help but scratch it. Zhang Dia scratched her head twice and secretly raised her head to look at Gu Huayu. Gu Huayu first turned her head away when Zhang Dia looked over, and went to the next room as if nothing had happened. Gu Huayu took out an ointment for reducing swelling and itching from the space, then returned to the previous room and handed the ointment to Lu Ji. "Here, this ointment is very effective for frostbite. Open it and apply it directly on the frostbite." Lu Ji stood up, so moved that she didn't know what to say, so she kept bowing to Gu Huayu to thank her. Gu Huayu nodded with a smile, turned around and left. "I told you that Xiaodong's family is very nice, please believe it. This is an easy job, so do it well, earn $2, and celebrate the new year well. After the new year, the weather gets warmer and it's easier to find things to do. Sister, it's a difficult day, you have to endure it day by day, but you will eventually get through it." Lu Ma's voice reached Gu Huayu's ears. "Thank you, eldest sister, for taking care of our family." Willow's grateful voice came over. "It's all about the boss, sister. Let me tell you, before I met the boss, I was sold many times, and I have never met such a good person as the boss. It is our good fortune to meet our employer. Let us thank our employer." Lu Ma continued. "My boss wants to thank me, and my eldest sister also wants to thank me. If it weren't for my eldest sister, how would we know our boss? If the eldest sister hadn't said good things in front of the boss, how could the boss use us?" Willow Branch said. Gu Huayu nodded slightly. This Liu Zi was really a person who knew how to live. Gu Huayu went to the shop. There were not as many people in the shop as before. Gu Chengwan was introducing the fragrant dew to others, and Gu Chengjiao was collecting money. After seeing off the guests, Gu Chengjiao greeted Gu Huayu. "Xiao, you're here." Gu Huayu walked up to Gu Chengjiao, looked down at her hands, and asked, "Is everything okay?" Gu Chengjiao raised her hand, opened it and moved it. "Well, I can feel comfortable now." Gu Huayu asked, "Do you feel sore and numb?" Gu Chengjiao touched her ring finger and little finger. "These of both hands are a little numb, but the others don't feel numb." Gu Huayu took Gu Chengjiao's hand and looked at it carefully for a while, then said, "The peripheral nerves have not recovered yet. They need to take care of themselves for a while. Try not to do heavy work." Gu Chengjiao nodded and said, "I understand." After finishing speaking, Gu Chengjiao asked in a low voice, "There was something wrong with Uncle Wang's shop. How is it? I heard about it yesterday and wanted to go over and have a look. Fuyu came to send a message and asked us not to go there." Gu Huayu lowered her voice and said, "It was Uncle Huang who asked Fuyu to come over and deliver the message. Don't worry, everything has been taken care of. Leave the rest to the yamen." Gu Huayu didn't want to say more and pushed the matter to the yamen. After experiencing what happened last time, Gu Chengjiao did not have a good impression of the yamen and asked, "Is the yamen reliable?" Gu Huayu raised her head and looked at Gu Chengjiao and said, "Now it is the Prime Minister of Wang County who handles affairs on behalf of the county magistrate. He is quite reliable." Gu Chengjiao breathed a sigh of relief and said, "That's good." Someone came over to pay, and the two sisters stopped talking. After the guests left, Gu Huayu asked, "Will Zhongwu come to the shop to make trouble again?" Gu Chengjiao sighed and said, "Well, I've made trouble twice. The second time, we reported him to the police, and the people from the yamen took him back, beat him up, and then let him go. These days, Jongwoo has been wandering around the shop, and he doesn't dare to come in again. The honeysuckle was not in the shop. He didn't see the honeysuckle, and he seemed very unwilling to do so. This family is so shameless. Gu Chengwan saw off the guests, turned around and came over, saying, Xiao, do we want to teach Jongwoo a lesson? Gu Huayu shook her head, it's fine if Lonisara doesn't show up. Don't pay attention to him. If he breaks in, go to the official and ask the official to teach him a lesson. Let him compensate us according to the price for whatever he damages. Gu Chengwan said, Lonisara has been hiding at home. It's so frustrating. Gu Chengjiao sighed, I don't know who told the Zhang family that Lonisara is in our shop. Gu Chengwan snorted and said, who else? Isn't it the talkative Wang Xiui? She is the only one in our family who likes to talk about family affairs everywhere. It annoys her to death. Gu Chengjiao raised her hand and patted Gu Chengwan, scolding, don't say that without any evidence. Gu Chengwan curled her lips, looked down at her nails, and stopped talking. Gu Huayu looked at the shelves next to her and changed the topic, is this all the fragrance left? Gu Chengwan looked up and answered, well, there are only a few bottles left, and they will be sold until tomorrow at most. Xiao, can you make some more? Gu Huayu thought for a while and said, this season, the plum blossoms are in full bloom, so we can do some things. However, the 26th family is moving, and we all have to go back. I'm afraid we won't have time to do it. Let's talk about the fragrant dew later. I'll go to Sixie's shop to see my brother. You guys should be busy. I'll come back later. Gu Chengwan asked hurriedly, Xiao, are you coming over for lunch? Gu Huayu shook her head, I'm having lunch at my eldest brother's place, and I'll come over for dinner. When Gu Huayu came out of the shop, she saw Jongwoo holding a big cake in his hand. He was biting the big cake and looking towards the shop from time to time. Gu Huayu looked at Jongwoo and walked straight forward, thinking about how to remove this as he walked. Unconsciously, Gu Huayu walked to the door of Ziwixian Tower. Gu Huayu felt a black shadow passing by in front of her eyes. She instinctively took a step back and looked over. She saw a man lying on the ground. Two waiters clapped their hands at the door and said, crazy woman, you want to have even if you don't have money eat in a restaurant? Get away from me and don't be an eyesore here, otherwise I won't let you go easily next time. After Gu Huayu saw the face of the lying person clearly, she secretly smiled in her heart. Where in life do we not meet each other? He knelt down and joked in a low voice, great immortal stinky feet, smell your stinky feet and come to Ziwixian Tower? You tell me, we have met again. Isn't it a fate? When the waiter saw Gu Huayu talking to this person, he said to Gu Huayu, do you know this woman? Girl, please take her away quickly. We can't do business with her lying here. Gu Huayu turned to look at the waiter, then looked back at the woman. The woman recognized Gu Huayu, raised her hands to cover her face, and cried, daughter, they bullied me too much. I want to go to eat, but they think I am poor and won't give me food. Daughter, do I look very poor? Am I someone who can't afford the money? My dear daughter, what can be tolerated by scholars? While crying, the woman opened a gap between her fingers and blinked at Gu Huayu. Gu Huayu didn't expect the woman to come out like this, but she still helped the woman up cooperatively, then turned around and argued with the waiter. Go and ask your shopkeeper to come out. I want your shopkeeper to tell you something. Why do you throw people out like this? The two waiters looked at each other. The taller one rubbed his hands and complained in a low voice to the shorter one, I said you can't do that. Look, are you in trouble? After hearing the tall man's complaint, Gu Huayu didn't wait for the short man to speak, and while patting the woman's body, she said, tell me, what's wrong with my sister? You're going to treat her like this. Is she dressed shabbily? Or did she eat in the store without paying? Or is this Zwixian tower only for dignitaries, and common people are not worthy to enter? The onlookers listened to Gu Huayu's questioning, and people with good intentions began to echo, open the door to do business, pay attention to being harmonious and making money, how can you dislike poverty and love wealth? That is, the poor also pay money to eat, and they don't eat for free, so you can't be too snobbish. Gu Huayu asked in a low voice, are you satisfied with this? Or do you want to make a big fuss and destroy the restaurant? The woman whispered, is it really a smash? No, I'm so poor. It's almost okay, the restaurant is really a smash, and I don't have any money to compensate. After saying that, the woman still covered her face and cried loudly, daughter, this store is too bullying. Let's eat in another store, okay? We have money, and we won't spend it at his house. End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 144. Chapter 144 I still have to support you. Gu Huayu nodded obediently, okay, let's switch to another house. After saying that, Gu Huayu helped the woman leave. When leaving, Gu Huayu did not forget to look back and glare at the two waiters. The two of them walked side by side for a while. Gu Huayu let go of the woman's arm, folded her hands and asked, how do we settle this matter today? The woman let go of her hands covering her face and looked back. When she saw that no one was following them or paying attention to them, she smiled and said, hello, my dear. Gu Huayu made a sound and said, smelly foot fairy, whose daughter are you calling? The woman laughed and said, you already call me Gu, but I call you my daughter. What's wrong? Huh? Whether it's the smelly foot fairy or the fragrant girl, aren't they all ants? Right. Gu Huayu turned to look at the smiling woman, and stretched out her hand in front of the stinky girl. Yes, you have taken advantage of this. Come, let's settle the score. The stinky girl stopped laughing and asked, what's the bill? Let me tell you first, I don't have any money. As she said that, the woman dug into her pocket. Gu Huayu took a step back and said with a half smile, what? You want to give me stinky shoes again? Let me tell you, if you dare to give me stinky shoes again, I will immediately take you back to Zwixian Tower and let the two waiters throw you away again. Stinky girl raised her hand and pinched Gu Huayu's face, and said with a smile, Stinky girl, are you angry now? Girls should not get angry easily. Angry people will get old easily. Gu Huayu never thought that the stinky girl would reach out and pinch her. Before she could dodge, the woman pinched her cheek. Gu Huayu raised her hand to block the stinky girl's hand and said angrily, you. The woman interrupted Gu Huayu's words with a playful smile, what are you really angry? You are so stingy and boring. Gu Huayu looked at the calm and composed stinky foot girl. Gu Huayu's anger was like a heavy fist hitting cotton. Gu Huayu glared at the stinky girl and turned to leave. Seeing Gu Huayu leaving, the smelly-footed girl hurriedly followed her and shouted, my dear, are you really annoyed? Wait for me, you walk slower. Why are you walking so fast? I, an old man like me, can't keep up. Gu Huayu looked at the passers-by who were looking towards them. She felt a little regretful about helping this guy out of the siege, and stopped to wait for the stinky girl to follow. Oh, that's right. Let me tell you, my legs are not very good, so I have to walk slower. The smelly-footed girl caught up and said to herself. Gu Huayu suppressed the anger in her heart and asked, why are you following me? The smelly-footed girl looked at Gu Huayu innocently, I'm your aunt. If I don't follow you, who should I follow? Gu Huayu was so angry that she said, Hezu, do you think you are addicted? Or are you blackmailing me? The smelly-footed girl looked around and whispered, how do you say you're cheating? Between us, aunt and nephew, the word blackmail is unnecessary. What, isn't it the Chinese New Year? I don't have anywhere to go. Can my niece take me in for a few days? When spring starts and the weather gets warmer, I'll leave on my own, okay? You still say you're not blackmailing me? You're obviously blackmailing me, Gu Huayu replied angrily. Stinky Foot Girl said with a flattering smile, I really don't think I'm blackmailing you. If I want to say it, we can only say that we are destined. You saved me from the siege that day, and you saved me from the siege today. This is not. Gu Huayu interrupted the stinky girl, you mean I got into trouble by meddling in my own business? The smelly girl shook her head, of course not, I'm not a trouble, I can do things for you. Doing things? What do you know? When you see a man, you take off his shoes and smell his stinky feet, Gu Huayu asked. Facing Gu Huayu's sarcasm, Stinky Foot Girl was not angry and still said with a smile, that's just a special hobby. In addition, I can also do many things, such as cooking. Come on, use your hands to take off men's smelly shoes to cook. I feel sick just thinking about it. Gu Huayu immediately stopped her. The smelly-footed girl was not annoyed and continued, I can make rice seedlings and comb my hair. By the way, my hair is very beautiful. I can't do anything like a flying bun, a falling horse bun, a spiritual snake bun. Gu Huayu was stunned for a moment, looked at the woman's hands, and asked, are you sure you really know how to comb your hair? Seeing that Gu Huayu was paying attention to her, the smelly-footed girl raised her eyebrows proudly and said, why should I lie? How about I comb it for you on the spot? Speaking, the stinky girl is about to start operating. Gu Huayu hurriedly stepped aside and stopped, stop it? The stinky girl stopped and asked, did you agree? Gu Huayu did not reply to her words, but asked, what is your name and where are you from? It's the end of the year, why don't you go home? The smelly-footed girl put away her smile and replied, I was injured when I was young. It hurt my brain. I couldn't remember anything after I woke up. Whose name was there, where was my family name, where was my home, etc., I couldn't remember anything. Gu Huayu narrowed her eyes slightly and stared at the woman, trying to distinguish the truth from falsehood in her words. Stinky Foot Girl gave a wry smile and then said, after I woke up, I wandered around outside. I thought that even if I couldn't remember it, one day I would meet someone who knew me. However, I have been wandering for more than 10 years and traveled all over Daxing, but I have never met anyone who knows me. Over 10 years, you are the first person to treat me well and help me. Let's meet in Shishan. How about you call me Shi Niang? Gu Huayu is the one who always accepts softness rather than toughness. After listening to the narration of the stinky-footed girl, her heart suddenly softened and her tone softened, so, you are also a pitiful person. Smelly Foot Girl nodded repeatedly, no, I always feel that my life is too miserable. Gu Huayu nodded, since you have nowhere to go, then follow me. From now on, I will call you Shi Niang. Shi Niang responded crisply, okay, what about you? What's your name? How should I call you? Gu Huayu said, my name is Gu Huayu, you can just call me Xiao. At this point, Gu Huayu suddenly thought of something, turned around and asked, how did you recognize me? If Gu Huayu remembered correctly, she had already recognized her when she called her. Gu Huayu is very confident in her makeup skills. That day, she put on makeup and even her father and mother could not recognize her, but this stinky girl could recognize her at a glance. Shi Niang was stunned for a moment, and a trace of panic flashed in her eyes. She was afraid that Gu Huayu would see the flaw, so she lowered her head and said, I recognized you not with my eyes, but with my nose. Huh? Nose? What do you mean? Gu Huayu asked in confusion. Shi Niang said, the smell on your body is different from others. You have a faint fragrance, but I can't tell which kind of flower it is. It's very special, and it feels like spring. Gu Huayu was stunned for a moment, and then realized that this was a perfume she had prepared for herself. So that's it, your nose is very good because you smell smelly feet a lot, Gu Huayu joked. Shi Niang was not annoyed and said with a smile, maybe. Xiao, do you have any money on you? Gu Huayu looked at Shi Niang and asked, what's wrong? Shi Niang touched her stomach with some embarrassment, what about that? I haven't eaten yet and I'm a little hungry. Gu Huayu pointed at Shi Niang with her finger and asked, just now, did you really go to eat the overlord dinner? Shi Niang lowered her head and whispered, what, am I hungry? I haven't eaten in several days. Gu Huayu looked up at the sky, then looked around, and walked forward. Shi Niang caught up and said, Xiao, where are you going? Gu Huayu glanced at her, looked up at the Jufeng restaurant not far away, and said, aren't you hungry? Go eat. Shi Niang looked at the signboard of Jufeng restaurant and her eyes suddenly lit up, Xiao Yu is really a good girl with a beautiful heart and a kind heart. She will definitely be rich and prosperous in the future. Gu Huayu turned her head to look at Shi Niang, who was constantly flattering her, but did not answer her words. The two of them entered the restaurant, and the waiter came over to greet them enthusiastically, two distinguished ladies, please come in. Gu Huayu said to the waiter, I want a private room. The waiter bowed respectfully and said, yes, young lady, come with the younger one. Shi Niang took Gu Huayu's hand and said softly, just sit in the hall, there's no need to order a private room. Gu Huayu ignored her and followed the waiter up to the second floor. Shi Niang hurriedly followed her upstairs and into the private room, where the waiter poured tea for the two of them. Gu Huayu ordered, we'll just have dinner for the two of us. Let's have 3 dishes and 1 soup of your restaurant's signature dishes. The waiter leaned over and said, yes, I've written it down. Please tell me, do you want the food to be spicy or not? Do you want drinks? Shi Niang said, just make it slightly spicy. No need for wine, just serve the food directly. The waiter responded, wait a moment, everyone. After the waiter stepped back, Gu Huayu looked at Shi Niang and asked, did the scar on your face come from that year? Shi Niang put down the teacup in her hand, reached out and touched the scar on her face, nodded and said, well, the scar left behind back then is very scary, isn't it? Gu Huayu nodded and said truthfully, it's a little scary. Why don't you remove the scar? Shi Niang raised her head and looked at Gu Huayu, smiling bitterly, I'm so poor that I can't even eat. Where can I get the money to remove scars? The ointment to remove scars is very expensive. Gu Huayu thought about it and didn't want to talk too much. At this time, it was not time to eat yet, so they were the only ones in the store. After a while, the waiter brought the food. As soon as the waiter stepped back, Shi Niang immediately picked up the chopsticks and started eating hungrily. Gu Huayu picked up the chopsticks and ordered while eating, slow down, be careful not to choke. Shi Niang's mouth was stuffed and she responded vaguely, I know. Seeing Shi Niang like this, Gu Huayu put down her chopsticks and reached out to pour her a cup of tea. As soon as Gu Huayu put down the teapot, she saw Shi Niang hurriedly picked up the teacup, drank 2 sips of tea, and then patted her chest with her hand, you choked me to death. Gu Huayu pursed her lips and smiled, I told you to slow down. Shi Niang glanced at Gu Huayu, but it was rare that she didn't get angry. I picked up my chopsticks to eat again, much slower than before. After Shi Niang slowed down, she looked very elegant when eating. Gu Huayu looked at Shi Niang while eating. Shi Niang noticed Gu Huayu's gaze and looked up. Gu Huayu looked away and concentrated on eating her own meal. After the meal, the two of them sat aside to drink tea. Gu Huayu looked at Shi Niang and asked, do you really want to follow me? Shi Niang looked up at Gu Huayu and asked, what? Is it inconvenient or do you not want me to follow you? Gu Huayu shook her head, no, I think you would rather I give you some money. Shi Niang narrowed her eyes slightly and pointed to the dishes that had not been removed from the table, do you think I'm at the end of my rope? So I beg you to take me in. Gu Huayu raised her eyebrows and said bluntly, isn't it? Shi Niang stood up suddenly, turned around and walked towards the door. You, just as Gu Huayu opened her mouth and shouted, Shi Niang came back and walked straight to sit opposite Gu Huayu. Said, you already think so, so just think so. I do have no money, but I still want to make it clear that the reason why I want to stay is because I think you, a little girl, are interesting and I like to stay with you. Gu Huayu smiled and said, okay, since you don't want money and are willing to follow me, then follow me. It's not like I, Minjiao Pavilion, can't afford to support idle people. However, since you are with me, we have to make an agreement. Shi Niang asked, Minjiao Pavilion? Why haven't I heard of it? What is Minjiao Pavilion? Gu Huayu sipped her tea and said calmly, it's a small sect, it's normal that you haven't heard of it. Follow me. Firstly, you are not allowed to inquire about my affairs. Secondly, you are not allowed to do anything that harms the people around me. Thirdly, you are not allowed to enter the boudoir without my permission. After listening to Gu Huayu's words, Shi Niang folded her hands on her chest and said thoughtfully, it seems that you are a person with stories. You said you are so young, where do you get your stories from? Gu Huayu looked at her coldly. Shi Niang raised her hand and said, okay, I won't ask about you. Okay, I promise you. Gu Huayu took out the cosmetic bag from her sleeve pocket and said to Shi Niang, sit over here. Shi Niang looked at the exquisite things on the table and sat down obediently at the seat designated by Gu Huayu. He asked curiously, what is this? What are you going to do? Gu Huayu raised her hand to smooth out Shi Niang's broken hair, lowered her head to choose two kinds of foundation, then applied it on her face, and then used concealer to cover up the scars. Shi Niang immediately understood the intention of Gu Huayu, stopped talking and let him take orders. With the time it took to hold a stick of incense, Gu Huayu stopped what she was doing, leaned back, looked at it for a while, nodded with satisfaction, and then handed a small mirror to Shi Niang's hand, take a look. Shi Niang took the mirror and asked, what is this? Gu Huayu responded casually, mirror. Shi Niang lowered her head and looked at herself in the mirror. When she saw herself in the mirror, she couldn't hide the surprise in her eyes. She reached out and touched her face, Xiao, how did you do that? On my face, where is the scar? Gu Huayu replied, your scar is still on your face, it's not gone, it's just covered. Shi Niang looked at the mirror for a long time and gave Gu Huayu a thumbs up, your technique is amazing. Gu Huayu put away her cosmetic bag, reached over to take the mirror, and put it into the cosmetic bag. I saw that your scar can be faded. I will prepare some ointment for you later. You can apply it every day. After some time, the scar on your face will fade away. Shi Niang looked at Gu Huayu in shock and asked excitedly, really? Gu Huayu raised her head and looked at Shi Niang, really? Shi Niang cupped her fists and said, if this is the case, I will follow you for the rest of my life. Gu Huayu waved her hands repeatedly and said, no, you don't have to follow me. If you want to follow me, I have to support you. I'm stupid. Shi Niang smiled and said, I don't care about this, I have made up my mind. From now on, wherever you go, I will follow you. End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 145. Chapter 145 Smart Man. Gu Huayu put the makeup bag into her sleeve pocket and said, I seem to have found a trouble for myself. After saying that, he got up and walked out. Shi Niang asked hurriedly, Xiao, where are you going? Gu Huayu said without turning her head, of course I'm going home. Meeting Shi Niang, Gu Huayu's plan was disrupted. Then wait for me, Shi Niang said as she chased after him. Gu Huayu left Jufeng restaurant, turned around and walked left, returning to the Xingxin Rouge shop along the road. Xiao, where did you get that small mirror? It's so bright and clear, and the people inside look like real people. Shi Niang followed her and asked as she walked around. Gu Huayu turned to look at Shi Niang. What? Do you want it? Shi Niang felt that the little girl was too smart, so she nodded and said, well, where did you buy it? How much money? I'll buy one too. Gu Huayu asked back, do you have money? Shi Niang's expression froze, and she lowered her lips and said, what about silver? You will get it when you have it. Xiao is a kind-hearted person, so it's not impossible to give me a piece of it, right? Gu Huayu stopped and said, okay, there's no need to flatter me, I won't do that. I remind you to face reality. First, you have no money. Second, even if you have money, you can't buy it. What do you mean? You are the only one in the world who has this thing? Are you unique? Shi Niang asked in shock. Gu Huayu continued to walk forward and replied, it's pretty much the same. This piece of mine was also given to me by a friend. My friend said that this is the only piece of land in the world. Oh, that's it. Shi Niang's mood suddenly dropped. The two of them walked to the street where Su Xian Rouge shop was located. From a distance, Gu Huayu saw Zhang Wu taking a nap leaning on a willow tree, and asked Shi Niang, do you know any kung fu? Shi Niang didn't understand why Gu Huayu suddenly asked about kung fu. She turned around and saw Gu Huayu staring ahead, so she followed Gu Huayu's gaze and roughly understood. What are you doing? You want to beat someone up? Gu Huayu's eyes were still on Zhang Wu, and she pursed her lips and said, well, did you see the man dozing off against the willow tree in front of him? Shi Niang nodded, I saw it. What happened? Did he bully you? Gu Huayu said calmly, he can't bully me. This man is very hateful. He almost beat his own sister to death not long ago. Go and teach him a lesson and lose one of his hands. You have to take care of others when they discipline girls, isn't it a little too lenient? Shi Niang asked. Gu Huayu turned to look at Shi Niang and asked, who said you wanted to follow me just now? Do you want to be at my disposal? Shi Niang wanted to give this smelly girl a slap. What? You want to hit me? Gu Huayu asked, staring at Shi Niang. Shi Niang looked at Gu Huayu in shock and thought to herself, can this girl read minds? Hurry to agree, how is it possible to beat you? Now I can count on you to take me in. Tell me, do you want to use your left hand or your right hand? Gu Huayu glanced at Shi Niang and said angrily, whatever, come as you please. Come find me at the rouge shop when you're done. I'll leave first. Shi Niang looked at Gu Huayu's back and said, didn't your adults tell you that children shouldn't be so angry? Gu Huayu didn't bother to pay attention to her and walked away. Seeing Gu Huayu waving her hands and walking forward, Shi Niang hurriedly shouted, hey! Gu Huayu pretended not to hear and continued walking forward. Shi Niang raised her voice and said, aren't you afraid that I will leave? Gu Huayu said without looking back, please. Shi Niang glared at Gu Huayu angrily, stamped her foot, and muttered, I thought you were a harmless little fairy, but I didn't expect that you are not a kind person either. Shi Niang muttered and turned around to the side alley. When she came out of the alley, she was unkempt, her clothes were in tatters, and the hideous scars on her face were daunting. Gu Huayu stood at the door of the shop, looking at Shi Niang dressed as a beggar, and pursed her lips and smiled. She likes to interact with smart people. Shi Niang walked up to Zhang Wu, kicked Zhang Wu, and shouted impatiently, get out of the way, you took my seat. Zhang Wu looked up at Shi Niang and asked sleepily, where is your seat? I have been here for almost a month. Shi Niang didn't wait for Zhang Wu to finish speaking, and kicked him again, I left, and you live here? It's easy to talk, live in other people's land, pay people money, this is a natural thing. According to 1 tael of silver a day, for a month of 30 days, you have to pay me 30 taels of silver. Bring it. As Shi Niang spoke, she reached out to Jongwoo and asked for some money. How much? 30 taels of silver? Why the don't you go and grab it? Jongwoo suddenly woke up, stood up from the ground, and glared at Shi Niang. Shi Niang raised her hand and gave Jongwoo a slap in the face. You and I should keep your mouths clean. Shi Niang's slap didn't use much force, but Jongwoo's skin was fair and his face immediately turned red. Jongwoo looked at the people coming around and felt humiliated. He threw his fist at Shi Niang and cursed, "You stinking bitch, if I don't beat you to death today, my surname is not Zhang." Before Jongwoo could get closer, Shi Niang took a step to the right and avoided Jongwoo's attack. He raised his foot and kicked back. Jongwoo fell to the ground due to the impact. Jongwoo got up from the ground, turned around and pounced on Shi Niang again with claws and teeth. This time, Shi Niang didn't dodge. She raised her hand and grabbed Jongwoo's left hand. She pushed and pulled it, only to hear a click, followed by Jongwoo's scream like a slaughtering pig. Shi Niang didn't let go. She held Jongwoo's wrist and twisted it before letting go. "I told you to keep your mouth clean." Jongwoo turned pale with pain and broke out in cold sweat. When he saw Shi Niang raising her hand, he thought Shi Niang was going to beat him again, so he knelt down and begged for mercy. "My aunt, please forgive me. I know I was wrong." Shi Niang clapped her hands, put her hands on her hips, and said slowly, "Get out of here, don't let me see you in Shishan, otherwise, I will break your legs." Jongwoo nodded repeatedly, "Yes, yes, little one, leave now, leave now." Shi Niang raised her foot and kicked over, "Get out." Jongwoo rolled away and crawled away. The onlookers looked at Jongwoo who was rolling away, and then at Shi Niang. Shi Niang looked at everyone. "What are you looking at? Is there anything good to see?" The onlookers lowered their heads in fear and dispersed. Shi Niang stood by the willow tree, turned and walked away. Gu Chengwan watched Shi Niang go away, then looked back at Gu Huayu. "Xiao, that guy was driven away." Gu Huayu nodded, turned around and entered the shop. Gu Chengwan followed in and said to Gu Chengjiao behind the counter, "Sister, you should have gone and had a look just now, that guy was beaten away by someone in a few blows." "Alas, Xiao, tell me, will he come back again?" Gu Huayu said, "My hand is broken and I won't be able to come back in a short time." Gu Chengwan asked in surprise, "My hand is broken? Really? How did you know, Xiao?" Gu Huayu looked at Gu Chengwan and said, "As you can see, didn't you see that the man's left hand looked like this when he left?" Gu Huayu imitated while talking. Gu Chengwan thought for a while and said, "It seems to be true. Evil people will be punished by evil people, and he deserves it." When Gu Huayu saw a guest coming in, she said, "You guys go ahead and get busy. I'll go take a look at the back." Gu Chengwan stepped forward to greet the guests, and Gu Huayu pointed to the backyard toward Gu Chengjiao. Gu Chengjiao nodded and said, "Go ahead." Gu Huayu went to the backyard and waited for a while at the back door. When she heard a knock on the door, she stepped forward to open the door. Shi Niang stepped in and asked, "How is it?" Gu Huayu closed the door and said, "Well, it's not bad. If it's the right hand, the effect will be better." Shi Niang retorted, "Hey, why are you like this girl? You said it yourself, you can do whatever you want with your left or right hand." Gu Huayu glanced at Shi Niang, walked past her, and said as she walked, "I just want to see what you would choose. I'm quite satisfied. Let's go into the house." Shi Niang followed Gu Huayu and said as she walked, "Get me some clothes. For the cold weather, tattered, drafty and cold." Lu Ma came out carrying the things. When she saw Gu Huayu, she bent her knees and said, "My boss." Gu Huayu ordered, "Mama Lu, go to the garment shop and buy some clothes." Buy them according to her figure. Don't buy them too fancy. At this point, Gu Huayu turned around and asked, what fabric do you like? Shi Niang said, fine cloth is fine. Gu Huayu said, 2 sets of fine cloth and 2 sets of satin. In addition, let's make 2 sets of clothes for Liuzi's family. This is silver. Gu Huayu put the money bag on the tray. Lu Ma bent her knees and responded, okay, I'll go right now. Lu Ma straightened up and looked at Shi Niang and said, this lady is about the same height as the old slave. There are 2 sets of new clothes in the old slave's house. How about changing this lady into them first? Shi Niang agreed with a smile and said familiarly, that's a good idea. Thank you, Mother Lu. My name is Shi Niang. Lu Ma bent her knees and said, hello, please Shi Niang, please come with me. Shi Niang followed Lu Ma to change clothes. Gu Huayu went to the house. When Lu Ji and Zhang Dia saw Gu Huayu come in, they immediately stood up to greet her. Gu Huayu waved her hands and said, no need to be polite, you are busy with your business. Mother and daughter Willow Branch sat down and continued working. Gu Huayu looked at the paper bags piled aside and nodded with satisfaction. Yeah, well done. Lu Ji smiled and replied, it's all because of my master's good teaching. Gu Huayu sat on the edge, helping fold papers and chatting with Lu Ji about home affairs. Zhang Dia was a little cautious at first, but when she saw Gu Huayu's gentle words, she slowly relaxed. Shi Niang changed her clothes, opened the curtain and came in, asking, Xiao, what do you think? Gu Huayu looked up, nodded and said, well, not bad, a bit like Lu Ma. Where is Lu Ma? Shi Niang turned around twice and said, well, I think it's good too. Mother Lu is out. Who are these two? Gu Huayu introduced, this is Lu Ji, and this is Lu Ji's daughter Dia. Lu Ji and Zhang Dia stood up and bent their knees towards Shi Niang and said, hello. Gu Huayu said to Liuzi's mother and daughter, her name is Shi Niang. Shi Niang greeted Lu Ji and her daughter, I will follow Xiao from now on, please take good care of me. Gu Huayu patted the chair next to her and said, come, sit here. Shi Niang sat over and asked, what are you doing? Gu Huayu explained it briefly, and then said, if you have nothing to do, help Liuzi and his wife do something. How to do it? Shi Niang asked. Gu Huayu handed over a piece of paper and said, take it and follow along. Shi Niang obediently picked up the paper and started to follow. Liuzi said sheepishly, Master, there is no need to help. I can do this with my servant and Dayat. Gu Huayu said while doing it, if you have nothing to do, being idle is also idle. Lu Ji said no more, and the few of them chatted while doing things. Seeing the frostbite on the hands of mother and daughter, Shi Niang asked, you are working outside, where is Daya's father? Can't he go out to work? Liuzi sighed and said, the child's father got a strange disease 2 years ago. He is completely weak. It's useless to ask for medical advice. People like us don't have the money to go to a big place for treatment, so we can only drag it out day by day. Gu Huayu asked about the symptoms of the man from Willow Branch and got an idea. He stood up and said, someone in our village had this disease and was finally cured with a folk prescription. Liuzi's eyes immediately lit up and he stopped what he was doing. Really? Master, can you get this recipe for me? It's just money. At worst, I'll sell the house where I live. Gu Huayu smiled and said, no money is needed. I have been studying since I was a child and have a good memory. I remember the recipe and I will write it to you later. Lu Ji stood up suddenly, pushed the chair away, and knelt beside Gu Huayu. Thank you, my boss. My boss is really a living Buddha. If Daya's father gets better, our family is willing to work as cows and horses for our boss for the rest of our lives. Gu Huayu stroked the willow branches and said, get up and talk. Aunt Lu, please don't do this. I haven't cured the head of your family yet. Liu Zi stood up and said, my master's kindness has already moved me very much. Gu Huayu stood up and said, let's go, I'll go to your house and see if the head of your house has the same disease I've seen. Lu Ji immediately responded, okay, thank you boss. Dia, you are working here, and I will take my boss over to have a look. Dia nodded and said yes. Gu Huayu followed Lu Ji to her house, opened the door and went in. The small yard was tidy, and De Zhuang was chopping wood in the yard. When he saw Lu Ji coming back, he stopped what he was doing and called out, Auntie, you are back. Looking past Lu Ji, Ji looked at Gu Huayu curiously. Lu Ji nodded, Da Zhuang, come here to pay tribute to my boss. De Zhuang walked over obediently and bowed to Gu Huayu. It can be seen that Willow Branch taught the children very well. Gu Huayu nodded towards Da Zhuang and said, let's go in. Liu Zi led Gu Huayu through the yard and into the house. As he walked, he asked De Zhuang, has your father rested? De Zhuang nodded, after eating and drinking medicine, I rested. Lu Ji pushed the door open, took a look inside the house first, and turned sideways to Gu Huayu and said, Master, please come. Gu Huayu entered the room, and the room was filled with a strong smell of medicine. Lu Ji walked to the bed and called softly, the child's father. Zhang Dongsheng opened his eyes and asked, Lu Ji, are you back? Is it dark? Liu Zi shook his head and said warmly, it's not dark yet. I'll bring my boss over to see you. My boss said that she had seen a disease like yours, and the man cured it with folk remedies. Zhang Dongsheng woke up, and after listening to his wife's words, he felt hope for survival in his heart. Really? So, my disease can be cured? Where are the Dong family? End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 146. Chapter 146 is just the thing to help. Willow Branch hurriedly moved to the side and said, here it is. When Zhang Dongsheng saw Gu Huayu, the light in his eyes suddenly dimmed, and he turned to look at Willow Branch, his mother, this. Lu Ji came over understandingly, looked at Gu Huayu apologetically, stepped forward and squeezed Zhang Dongsheng's hand, and whispered, his father, our employer is willing to help us because our employer is kind-hearted. We have no other way now, why not give it a try? Maybe it's useful. Zhang Dongsheng hesitated, nodded, and said, okay. Liu Zi turned around and said with a smile, Master, I'm tired. Gu Huayu nodded and said, it doesn't matter. Gu Huayu took a step forward and saw that Zhang Dongsheng's complexion was sallow and sluggish. Then he looked at his limbs and saw edema in his limbs and a bulging abdomen. Liu Zi looked at Gu Huayu nervously, feeling uneasy and asked, Master, does that person in your village have this disease? There was hope in his words. Gu Huayu took a step back and said, the symptoms are similar, but Uncle Zhang's condition is much more severe. Did Uncle Zhang often eat screws before? Lu Ji nodded like a chicken pecking rice, yes, his father often goes to the river to catch fish and brings some screws to eat. What? His father's disease is related to eating screws. Aunt Lu, you haven't eaten, Gu Huayu asked. Liu Zi shook his head, I always feel that it can't be washed clean, so I don't like to eat it, and the children don't like to eat it either. Every time, his father eats it alone. Zhang Dongsheng couldn't help but ask, Master, is my illness related to eating screws? Gu Huayu nodded, well, Uncle Zhang must have been infected with the schistosomiasis in the screws, and it took a long time. Lu Ji asked nervously, Master, can it still be cured? You can see that you can definitely cure it, right? Master, I beg you, can you help us? With that said, Liu Zi knelt down again, crying and begging Gu Huayu. Gu Huayu helped the willow branch up and said, "Aunt Lu, get up and talk. I'll do my best." Lu Ji wiped away her tears, leaned forward and said, "Thank you, boss. What medicine should we use?" Gu Huayu stepped out and said, "Let Uncle Zhang rest, let's take a step to talk." Out of the house, Gu Huayu looked at the willow branches and then at Did Shuang. Liu Zi asked in fear, "Master, what do you mean by this? His father is infected with the disease." Gu Huayu nodded, "If you don't protect yourself properly, you will also be infected." Lu Ji looked at her son worriedly and asked, "My boss, please help me check. Is De Zhuang okay?" While examining Zhang Dazhuang, Gu Huayu explained, "This is a disease caused by parasitic infection. If the protection is not appropriate, people around you will also be infected. Now that one person is sick, the family has become extremely poor. What should we do if we all get this disease?" Lu Ji didn't dare to think about it, and rubbed his hands on the side in fear. Gu Huayu noticed Lu Ji's uneasiness and comforted her, "Aunt Lu, don't be nervous. Even if you are infected, judging from your symptoms, it is mild and not difficult to treat." Hearing Gu Huayu's words, Lu Zhixuan's heart relaxed. "Thank you, boss." Gu Huayu smiled. After checking Zhang Dazhuang, he then checked Lu Ji. "You're okay. Aunt Lu, come back with me and I'll give you a prescription." The willow branches said yes again and again. When the two returned to the backyard, Lu Ji said to Gu Hua, "Master, I want to talk to Sister Lu." Gu Huayu asked, "Is it because of the money?" Lu Ji's face suddenly turned red when Gu Huayu exposed her thoughts, and she lowered her head in embarrassment. He nodded and said, "Yes, the slave family wants to borrow some money from Sister Lu to buy medicine. Once the slave family pays the wages, it will be returned to Sister Lu." Gu Huayu thought for a while and said, "Forget it, go and do your work. I'll go to the pharmacy to get you some medicine." "Boss, how can this be so good? You give us work and help us with our medical treatment." "This," Lu Ji said incoherently. Gu Huayu smiled and said, "It's okay, we met, and I happened to be able to help, so I helped you. It's fate." Lu Ji burst into tears of gratitude and bowed to Gu Huayu again and again. Gu Huayu returned to the study, went into the space to get some anti-worm medicine, and then went to the drugstore to grab some medicine for health. After coming back, Gu Huayu handed the medicine to Lu Ji and said, "This medicine is for Uncle Zhang, and this medicine is for you three. Everything that Uncle Zhang has used must be heated, boil it in water. Also, the toilet that Uncle Zhang used must be soaked in this." Lu Ma was so moved that she wiped her tears and said to Lu Ji, "Sister, when you meet your boss, your family will be saved. We are all lucky people." Lu Ji wiped away her tears and nodded, "My boss, you are a great benefactor to our family. As long as his father gets well, from now on, our family will be at our disposal." Gu Huayu smiled and said, "Hurry back and ask Uncle Zhang to take the medicine. I will pay Dia your wages for today." Liu Zi hurriedly said, "Master, there is no need to pay wages." Gu Huayu interrupted her with a smile, "How can this happen? Do as you said in advance. I'm helping Uncle Zhang see a doctor because I happen to have seen this kind of disease. Let's go back to the same code." "But, this." Lu Ji held the medicine in his hand and turned to look at Lu Ma for help. Lu Ma smiled and pushed the willow branch outwards, "My boss helps you and doesn't expect you to repay. Listen to my boss and go back as soon as possible." Lu Ji said as he walked, "Isn't this very bad?" "This." Mama Lu whispered, "My boss is kind-hearted and willing to help you. Just remember how good my boss is. Let's go. Go back and serve Dia's father to take the medicine so that Dia's father can get well soon." "But how should we repay our boss for his great kindness to us?" Willow Ji asked. Lu Ma smiled and said, "Silly girl, whatever you have, my boss has it. What you don't have, my boss has it too. How can my boss expect you to repay me? We have met a good person. From now on, do things well and live a good life." The two people's voices gradually faded away. Shi Niang looked at Gu Huayu and said, "This Lu Ma is really a sensible person." Gu Huayu smiled and did not answer. She turned to De Ya and said, "How many paper bags are there in total?" De Ya bent her knees and lowered her head to start counting. After a while, Dia said, "My boss, there are 436 in total." Gu Huayu nodded, went to the next room to get some money and handed it to Dia. "Here is 218 yuan, please accept it." De Ya didn't answer the question and said, "My boss, there's Aunt Lu here, Shi Niang, and my boss are here to help." Shi Niang looked at De Ya with admiration and said with a smile, "This kid is really sincere, accept it. What I did with my boss also counts as your mother and son's doing." De Ya looked at Gu Huayu. Gu Huayu stretched out her hand and said, "Well, take it." De Ya reached out to take the money, bowed to Gu Huayu and said, thank you, boss, thank you Shi Niang." Shi Niang sighed, "Why is this girl so sensible?" Gu Huayu said to Dia, "That's it for today, go back. Continue tomorrow." Dia said goodbye to the two of them and exited the house. Gu Huayu looked at the frostbite medicine on the table and shouted, "De Ya, come back." De Ya hurried in and asked nervously, "Master, what's the matter?" Gu Huayu handed her the frostbite medicine, "Take this and apply it to the affected area before going to bed at night." De Ya took the frostbite medicine and thanked her again. After De Ya left, Shi Niang said with a smile, "You scared that girl just now. Her hands and feet were shaking when she came in. How can you have such a strong deterrent at such a young age?" Gu Huayu looked at Shi Niang and asked, "Are you afraid of me?" "What am I afraid of you for?" Shi Niang asked. Gu Huayu spread her hands, "So, how could I ever be a deterrent?" "Master, how about eating mutton pot tonight?" Lu Ma opened the curtain and came in and asked. When Shi Niang heard about the mutton pot, she immediately responded, "The mutton pot is good. In cold weather, eating the pot is the warmest." Gu Huayu nodded and said, "Okay, let's just have the mutton pot, and make a backup for 5 people, and let King Zhu take it back to Miwen." Lu Ma bent her knees and stepped back. During dinner, the 3 sisters chatted and laughed, while Shi Niang lowered her head to eat the whole time. After dinner, Gu Huayu took Gu Chenjiao's pulse and said, "Sister's body has finally recovered and the medicine can be stopped. There are 2 boxes of elixirs over there in Miwen. I will bring them to you tomorrow. From now on, you can take them every day, just 1 pill will do." Gu Chengjiao breathed out heavily, "I can finally stop taking medicine." Gu Huayu said, "Second sister, the eldest sister has just been transferred back. She should not work too hard. She must eat 3 meals a day on time. You must supervise her." Gu Chengwan agreed, "Don't worry Xiao, I will definitely take good care of the eldest sister." The 3 sisters talked again, and then Gu Huayu took Shi Niang back to Miwen. Seeing that there was only one person named Lonisara in Nyoda's garden, Shi Niang asked in surprise, "It's such a nice garden, why is it all empty? Why don't you buy more people?" Gu Huayu replied, "Trouble." Shi Niang followed Gu Huayu, looked left and right, and said to herself, "The nice garden is empty, but it's too cheap." Gu Huayu ignored her and turned to ask Lonisara, "Eaten dinner yet?" Lonisara replied, "I've eaten it." Gu Huayu ordered, "Take Shi Niang to Qingtian Pavilion, and you will serve her in Qingtian Pavilion for the next few days." "Hey, Xiao, can't I live with you?" Shi Niang asked immediately after hearing this. Gu Huayu turned to look at Shi Niang and said calmly, "Where are the 3 chapters of the agreement? Why are you so serious? We get along well with each other, so we can be considered as friends, right? Shi Niang said with a smile. 3 chapters of the agreement, if you can't abide by them, please leave, Gu Huayu said with a straight face. Shi Niang saw that Gu Huayu was very defensive and did not dare to test her easily. Although she was extremely curious about her curiosity was more important than a place to stay. At this moment, she needed a warm bed and to avoid being chased. People realize that current affairs are not the same. After Shi Niang thought about it, she waved her hand and walked forward. Okay, where is Qingtian Pavilion? Landong hurriedly stepped forward and said, please come with me. After Lonisara and Shi Niang walked away, Kingzu stepped forward and reminded him worriedly, girl, we don't know Shi Niang's background. Gu Huayu looked at the direction Shi Niang was leaving and said, it's okay, I'll just keep her for a few days. Kingzu said no more. Gu Huayu asked, is Zhongwu out of the city? Kingzu leaned forward and said, yes, after Zhongwu left the Suxin shop, he went directly to the medical clinic. He was kicked out because he could not pay the consultation fee. Then he held his hands and headed south. The younger one followed him until he reached Strange Rock Ridge before returning. Well, I should be back to Shangtai village. Let's go see Su Mi and Gu Huayu said. The two of them went to Su Min's yard. Ruanwu heard footsteps and stuck his head out. When he saw it was Gu Huayu, he hurriedly greeted her and greeted her. Miss Xiao is here, please come to the house. Gu Huayu returned the courtesy and walked into the house. Lu Guang stepped forward and bowed his hands in greeting, and Gu Huayu returned the favor. Su Min held up her hands and wanted to sit up, but Gu Huayu quickly stopped her and said, you should just lie down, don't move around. Su Min smiled bitterly and said, I can't move even if I want to. Gu Huayu stepped forward to feel her pulse, then looked at Su Min's face, and nodded with satisfaction, well, she's recovering well. Thank you, Miss Xiao, Su Min said. Gu Huayu took a pill and handed it over, take this. Su Min didn't ask what it was. He took it obediently and put it in his mouth. He turned his head and drank from Junja's hand and swallowed it. After Su Min took the medicine, Gu Huayu looked at Ruanwu and asked, have you found out? Have Deng Jiao, Chen Liang, and their entourage left Xishan? Ruanwu leaned over and said, as the girl expected, Chen Liang and Ren Yinchi returned to Huangji. By that time, the shopkeeper and others had already left for almost an hour. Chen Liang and others searched the city all morning but found no trace of the shopkeeper and them, so they left Xishan through the north gate at noon. By the way, a doctor from Wangjiaxiang in the north of the city did not return from a consultation last night. The younger one's body was found in a mass grave outside the city. He was stabbed to death. Gu Huayu said, yes, I understand everyone should be more vigilant in the past 2 days and don't be careless. Yes. Don't worry, girl. We'll understand, Lu Guang replied. Gu Huayu looked at Su Min and said, you are so happy, let's set off on the 3rd day of the Lunar New Year. Su Min nodded, okay, I understand. Gu Huayu continued, my family has decided to move on the 26th of the 12th lunar month, and I have to go back on the 25th. I'm sorry, I can't celebrate the New Year with everyone. Lu Guang said with a smile, Miss Xiao, don't worry about me waiting. Ruanwu's cooking skills are excellent. With him here, I won't have to worry about the New Year's Eve dinner. Girl, please feel free to go back. Gu Huayu bowed to Ruanwu and said, thank you for your hard work. Ruanwu touched his head and said with a smile, girl, you are serious. Make something for yourself. What's the trouble? Don't worry, girl, go back. Girl, do you want to check on the woman who is with you today? Lu Guang asked. Gu Huayu shook her head, no, she doesn't have any ill intentions toward me. Besides, she will leave after staying for a few days, so there is no need to pry. Lu Guang bowed his head and said, okay, I understand. Gu Huayu sat idle for a while, then got up and left. Gu Huayu just walked to the door of her small courtyard and met Xi Niang waiting here. Didn't you go to rest? Why are you here? Gu Huayu asked. Xi Niang walked into the yard first, paying attention to Huayu, and picked a plum blossom, put it under her nose and smelled it. Of course I'm waiting for you. The plum blossoms here are pretty good. Xi Niang responded to Gu Hua's words first, looked at the plum tree in the yard and admired. Gu Huayu followed Xi Niang and asked as she walked, "What do you want from me?" Xi Niang turned around, put her hand on Gu Huayu's shoulder, and said with a smile, "You said you would give me ointment to remove scars. I was afraid that you would forget about it, so I came to ask for it myself." End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 147. Chapter 147 I can't figure it out. Xi Niang didn't take Gu Huayu's words to heart at first. It was obvious that she was able to diagnose Lu Ji's man's illness based on Lu Ji's story, which really shocked her. Having been wandering around for many years, Xi Niang has met countless people. Intuitively, she knew that the little girl in front of her was not simple. The excuse that someone in the village has the same disease is just as good as lying to Willow Branch. How to fool her? Gu Huayu raised her hand and patted Xi Niang's hand, saying, "It's too heavy, get up and drive." Xi Niang removed her hand, walked in side by side with Gu Huayu, and asked casually, "Xiao, do you know medical skills?" Gu Huayu turned to look at Xi Niang and said without hiding anything, "I know a little bit about it." Xi Niang smiled and said, "You will know the cause of Willow Branch man's disease just by listening to it. You only understand the superficial knowledge? Are you lying to children?" Gu Huayu stopped and asked, "What do you want to say?" Xi Niang had never seen such a sensitive person before. She was stunned for a moment, then said with a smile, "It's nothing. I just feel that you are becoming more and more invisible to me. It makes me more and more curious about you." Gu Huayu lowered the corner of her mouth and said, "Okay, put your curiosity aside, I'm not a man's stinky foot." Xi Niang raised her hand to pat Gu Huayu, but Gu Huayu avoided her. "You are not allowed to use your hands when it comes to talking," Gu Huayu said with a smile. Xi Niang saw that one palm missed, and then took action again. Gu Huayu raised her hand to stop her, dodged and shouted, "Stinky feet fairy, you don't want the ointment anymore." Xi Niang wanted to take the opportunity to try Gu Huayu's skills, but when she heard the word ointment, she decisively stopped. He pretended to be angry and said with a straight face, "Don't call me by this name from now on." Gu Huayu stuck out her tongue at Xi Niang and said provocatively, "That depends on my mood." "You," Xi Niang still wanted to speak. Gu Huayu spoke first, "You don't want the ointment anymore." Xi Niang waved her hand and said helplessly, "It's up to you." "Who asked me to ask for anything from you?" Gu Huayu said with a smile, "That's right. Just wait here and I'll get the ointment for you." Xi Niang said to Gu Huayu's back, "Girl, I'm already at the door. If you don't welcome me in for a cup of tea, is this how you treat guests?" "Miss, there is no one here to serve you, and there is no tea. If you want something, just wait here," Gu Huayu replied in a loud voice without looking back. Xi Niang watched Gu Huayu enter the room and raised her hand to see that the palm she just struck was not slow, and the little girl was able to avoid it calmly. Interesting. After a while, Gu Huayu came out with the ointment and handed it to Xi Niang. "Here, use it once in the morning and evening every day and see the effect. It's best not to go out during the days when you apply the ointment." Xi Niang asked in confusion, "Why don't you go out?" Gu Huayu replied, "It's very dusty outside, which is not good for your skin. Besides, forget it, I'll lend you this for a few days, and you'll know after you apply the medicine on it." Xi Niang took the mirror, held it in her hand and said with a smile, Just give it to me, why should I borrow it? You gave it to me, I won't pay it back. Gu Huayu didn't expect that Xi Niang had a rogue side, and it seemed that she was still too naive. He gritted his teeth and said, "Oh, you." Xi Niang smiled in a good mood and said, "What's wrong with me? What do you want to say?" Gu Huayu waved her hand, "I don't want to say anything. Take it and get out of here before I get angry. I don't want to see you." Xi Niang smiled happily and said, "Gu Xiao, thank you, I'll get out immediately, I'm the best at getting out." Gu Huayu watched Xi Niang leave the courtyard for a long time and said, "This is also a weirdo. It's quite strange, girl, don't you really want to check it out?" Kingza jumped down from the camphor tree. Gu Huayu shook her head, "No, she will do it when she wants to." "But," Gu Huayu explained patiently, "she has not stood against us, and there is no conflict of interest with us. We should respect her and give her some space." Kingza seemed to understand. Lan Jingwei started his career by inquiring and collecting various information. He grew up in Lan Jingwei. No one had ever told him that respecting the other person meant that there was no need to investigate the other person. He didn't understand the conflict between respect and investigation, but he still leaned forward and said, "Okay, I'll listen to the girl." Gu Huayu didn't understand Kingza's worries, so she just said, "I've been tired for the past 2 days, go and rest." Kingza bowed and stepped back. Xi Niang returned to the house and couldn't wait to apply the medicine in front of the mirror. Looking at the ink-black face, Xi Niang understood why Gu Huayu asked her to stay and not go anywhere. On the other side, on the way to the capital, Deng Jiao was lying in the carriage. After listening to the servant's report, he didn't speak for a long time. Chen Liang looked at Deng Jiao, who was frowning, and waved to his subordinates, "Step back first." The servant bowed and stepped back. Chen Liang said with relief, "Brother Deng, don't worry, we just haven't found him yet. Let's send more people to check, and we will definitely find him." After all, Suji was seriously injured. In addition to Suji, they had 7 or 8 seriously injured people. Hua Zhe is taking a group of wounded people with him. Where can he escape to? We don't believe it. Can Hua Zhe still go to heaven and earth? Let's go back to Beijing first and find a doctor to detoxify the poison. Deng Jiao's hands and feet were so weak that he couldn't even lift the bowl. He said feebly, "It's easier said than done. We have been searching for him for 10 years. If we hadn't followed Mr. Zhu here, how would we have known that he was hiding in Shishan? Don't underestimate Hua Zhe. This man has a deep mind." Chen Liang said disapprovingly, "One moment and the other. 10 years ago, Your Excellency just took over Long Shadow Guard and had too many things to do and no time to look for him. How can it be the same now? It's only a matter of time for Your Excellency to get rid of him sooner or later." Deng Jiao didn't want to argue, so he asked instead, "What kind of poison is Wang Qin's poison?" Chen Liang shook his head, "I don't know why, this poison looks like cartilage powder, but why the antidote is not only ineffective, but also fatal." Last night, the group returned to the inn. Chen Liang immediately asked for a doctor. The doctor diagnosed that everyone had been infected with cartilage powder and prepared an antidote for them. The first person to take the antidote died on the spot. Chen Liang was so angry that he cursed the quack doctor and stabbed the doctor to death with a sword. After this, no one dared to take the antidote. Chen Liang led people back to Huangji, hoping to force Hua Zhe to hand over the antidote, but he arrived a step too late, and Huangji also left the building empty. Deng Jiao fell into deep thought and said after a long time, "When did Wang Qin understand poison? I have never heard anyone mention it." Chen Liang was also puzzled, "Maybe it's Hua Zhe's strategy to protect us. Wang Qin's Qinggong is good, so it's best for her to poison us. With Hua Zhe and Mi Chen restraining us, it's best for Wang Qin to take action." Deng Jiao nodded, "Well, This explanation makes sense, but where does this poison come from? Huajia and Suji are not good at this. A thought flashed through Chen Liang's mind and he asked, Suji was only 10 years old when he left. Could it be that he learned this? Deng Jiao shook his head. No, if Suji knew this, he would have taken action yesterday. Chen Liangming nodded, yes. Deng Jiao shook his head with a headache. I don't want to think about it anymore. Let's go back to Beijing first. Chen Liang nodded and said, well, let's set off. Let's go on and drive back day and night. On the 25th day of the 12th lunar month, the four brothers and sister Gu Huayu returned to Shanghai village together. When they arrived home, it was already noon. Brother Sui was playing with a few little guys at the gate of the courtyard. He saw a carriage approaching. He stared blankly for a while. When he saw that the driver was Gu Chengdong, he dropped what he was holding and ran over. Daddy is back. Dad is back. Gu Chengdong stopped the car, jumped out of the car, and reminded, Brother Sui, please slow down. Gu Huayu was the last to get out of the car. Brother Sui turned around to see her, got off Gu Chengdong, and turned towards Gu Huayu. He was so scared that Gu Chengdong hurriedly grabbed him and said, Brother Sui, you can't rush like this, let's let the little ant fall. Brother Sui was stopped and looked at Gu Huayu aggrievedly. Brother Sui misses my sister-in-law. Gu Huayu smiled and said, Brother, there is no need to stop Brother Sui. The child is happy, just let him. Brother Sui got Gu Huayu's permission, shook off Gu Chengdong's hand, and rushed towards Gu Huayu. Sister-in-law, sister-in-law, Brother Sui misses his sister-in-law. He threw himself into Gu Hua's arms. Gu Huayu caught Brother Sui, smiled and touched his forehead with her forehead, and asked softly, really? Gu Chengwan came over, reached out and poked Brother Sui's face hard, and said, you are a heartless little kid. My second aunt treats you very well. You only have your eyes for your younger aunt. Huh. Brother Sui was in pain and pouted, second aunt is bad. After saying that, he glanced at Gu Chengwan secretly, fearing that Gu Chengwan would pinch him again, so he lowered his head and hid in Gu Huayu's arms. Gu Huayu smiled and protected Brother Sui's head, preventing Gu Chengwan from poking him again. Second sister, okay, don't pinch Brother Sui's breasts. What should I do if the fleshy flesh that has finally grown is removed? Gu Chengjiao was watching their frenzy from the side. Gu Chengdong unloaded his luggage from the carriage, took a wooden horse and said to Brother Sui, Brother Sui, here, your sister-in-law bought it for you. When Brother Sui saw the toy, he immediately let go of Gu Huayu and turned around to pick up the toy. Hey, who do I think you are? It turns out that a powerful person from our family is back, Wang Xiui said with a bulging belly and angrily at the door. The laughter outside the house suddenly stopped. Gu Huayu looked at Mr. Wang and said secretly, some people are really the Terminator of aura. Seeing the awkward situation, Gu Chengjiao smiled and smoothed things over. Hello Xiui, I haven't seen you for a long time. Your belly is so big, will you give birth soon? Speaking of the child, Wang Xiui showed a rare smile, touched her belly and said, it's almost the end of the first lunar month. Gu Chengwan whispered to Gu Huayu, I will be upset when I see this person when I come back. Gu Huayu replied softly, just ignore it. Is it okay? Can you be okay if you are upset? Gu Chengwan asked. Gu Huayu said in a low voice, pretend not to see her, pretend she doesn't exist. Oh, you are indifferent. Okay, indifferent. Gu Chengwan nodded. I heard Xiao's voice. Are Xiao, Xiaowan and the others back? Mrs. Fang came out of the courtyard. Seeing Gu Huayu and others, Fang happily shouted into the yard, Xiao and the others are back. Gu Huayu stepped forward to greet Fang. When people in the courtyard heard that Gu Huayu was back, they all came out to welcome her and pushed Wang aside. Xiui is heavy, so don't stand at the door. Be careful of people squeezing you, Ms. Jean reminded from the side. Wang Xiui glared at Gu Huayu resentfully, and bumped into Gu Huayu, who was stepping forward to greet Qin. Gu Huayu was stared at in confusion and stepped forward to greet Qin. Gu Chengliang came over and took the baggage from Gu Huayu's hand, held her hand with one hand and asked, "Dad said you would return to Xishan at 19. If I had known you would come back at 19, I should have waited 2 more days. By the way, I returned to Xishan at the age of 19, why didn't I come back earlier?" Gu Huayu let Gu Chengliang hold her hand and replied, "I'll wait for the eldest brother, eldest sister and second sister to go back together. Yes, it's the end of the new year, and the business in the shop is good, you can't bear to close the shop, right? Grandfather, his second uncle, and his third uncle are in the main room. You go over there to greet the elders first, and then come to the east wing for dinner. I will serve you food." Gu Chengliang led Gu Huayu into the yard and reminded him in a low voice. Gu Huayu nodded and went to the main room with Gu Chengjiao and Gu Chengwan. It is the custom of Shangtai village that if a family has any big or small matter, every family in the village will come to help with tables and benches 1 day in advance. The whole family will go to the host's house to eat on the running water mat for 2 days. The master of the house kills pigs and sheep, buys wine and vegetables, and does his best to entertain everyone. The helpers are led by one person, who arranges those who buy, write couplets, pound rice, grind tofu, carry water, wash vegetables, cook, hold ladles, serve and pass around dishes, and collect and wash dishes. The division of labor is extremely detailed, complex but not chaotic, and everything is in order. Gu Huayu followed Gu Chengjiao and Gu Chengwan. When she saw them calling people to greet them, she followed them and called them to greet them. After greeting the elders, Gu Huayu took Gu Chengjiao and Gu Chengwan to the east wing for dinner. After dinner, Gu Chengwan was taken away by the little sisters in the village. Gu Huayu got up and was about to go back to her house. When she went out, she saw Zhang Wu's mother-in-law, Wu Shi, squatting with several women washing vegetables. "Xiao, come here." Seeing Gu Huayu coming out, Gu Chengliang waved and called. Gu Huayu looked over and saw her father lowering his head to write a couplet, while Gu Chengliang was helping to grind the ink beside him. When Gu Huayu approached, Gu Chengliang asked, "Dad, let Xiao write a few words. You have been standing for a long time." Gu Dichang nodded in agreement, looked at Gu Huayu and said, "How about Xiao writing the couplets for the doors in the backyard?" Gu Chengliang was afraid that Gu Huayu would refuse, so he first said, "My father's legs cannot stand for a long time. Xiao will help my father write a few lines." Gu Huayu looked at Gu Dichang's legs and nodded in agreement, "Okay, I'll write it in the backyard." Gu Chengliang hurriedly cleared the table next to him, put pen, ink, paper and inkstones on it, and said, "That's good. I'll grind the ink for Dad and Xiao, and my second uncle and the others will be responsible for pasting the couplets." Gu Dezi nodded and said yes. When Gu Huayu lowered her head to write, she asked in a low voice, "Brother, I saw the Wu family but not Zhang Wu. Didn't Zhang Wu come over?" Gu Chengliang turned to look at Wu, who was not far away, and said in a low voice, "Isn't Zhang Wu in the county? You have been in the county for the past few days, but you haven't seen him." Gu Huayu looked up at Gu Chengliang and asked in surprise, "He's not back?" "No, King Zhu is eyeing Weishi Ridge." Of course, Gu Huayu will not say this. Gu Chengliang shook his head and explained, "I haven't come back. I went to various houses yesterday to invite people. I went with my second uncle. I didn't see Zhang Wu at Zhang's house. Wu said that Zhang Wu had entered the city." "What? Zhang Wu went there again? Did you ask someone to beat him up? King Zhu is so good, will Zhang Wu be beaten stupidly?" End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 148. Chapter 148, Coming to the Door. I have to say that Gu Changliang understands Gu Huayu very well. Gu Huayu shook her head. No, it's a long story. I'll talk to you in detail later. When Gu Changliang saw someone coming around, he knew it was not the time to talk, so he didn't ask any more questions. Gu Huayu immersed herself in writing the couplets in the backyard. Just as she handed the pen to Gu Changliang, Wan came over and called out, "Brother Liang, Xiao, your uncle and aunt are here. Hurry up and see them." Gu Changliang put down the things in his hands and pulled Gu Huayu to follow Wanji to the wing. As he walked, he asked, "Mom, are the two uncles here? Where are cousin Wei and cousin Chen? Are they both here?" Wan Lifeng has two elder brothers, the eldest brother Wan Gaifeng, and her two sons, Wan Wei and Wan Chen. The second brother, Wan Guihua, has twin daughters, Wan Dashuang and Wan Xiaoshuang. Wan Shi smiled and responded, "They are all here, and so are the eldest pair and the little pair." As soon as the eldest pair and the little pair arrived, they asked about Xiao. Gu Huayu smiled, feeling a little guilty in her heart. In her memory, her two uncles and aunt treated her very well. The trajectory of her life changed because of her rebirth. For the past 6 months, she has been busy with various trivial matters, and until now, she has not visited her two uncles. Gu Huayu entered the side room and greeted her two uncles, aunt, and cousins. The grandmother Meng pulled Gu Huayu to follow, and retreated the silver bracelet in her hand to Gu Huayu's hand. "We are all very happy that Xiao is getting better. I don't have much to offer, but this silver bracelet was given to me by my mother-in-law when I was growing up. Don't dislike Xiao. This is my aunt's wish. I hope Xiao will be smooth in the future." Gu Huayu looked at the bracelet on her hand. She didn't know what to do for a moment, so she turned to look at Wanji. The two uncles are both honest farmers, and their families are not well off. Wan Shi smiled and nodded, and said, "Just accept your aunt's wishes." With Wan's permission, Gu Huayu thanked Meng for his blessing. Second Aunt Zhang said with a smile, "Xiao Yu, second aunt is the one who has nothing to offer. I haven't seen you for a year, and my second sister-in-law doesn't know if you have grown taller. Are the legs long? Second aunt, I think I made a pair of shoes for you, but I don't know if they will fit. Do you like it?" As he spoke, Zhang took out a pair of lake blue embroidered shoes from the bag beside him and handed them to Gu Huayu. Jiang's embroidery work is considered to be one of the best in Sanhe town. On weekdays, Zhang will make embroidery and sell it in the market to supplement the family income. This time, Gu Huayu didn't look at Wanji. She happily took the embroidered shoes from Jiangxi and thanked her, "My aunt gave it to me. Xiao likes it?" "Thank you, second auntie." Menchi smiled and took over the words, "Of the children in our family, Shu Xiao is the most well-behaved and sensible. Your second aunt stayed up several nights to make these shoes. Please try them on quickly." Jiangxi explained sheepishly, "It's not several nights, just 2 nights. Wanji said with a smile, "Second sister-in-law is interested. Xiao, please put it on quickly." Gu Huayu sat next to Zhang, bent down and took off her shoes, walked a few steps on the ground, and said, "It fits your feet very well. The soles are very soft and easy to wear." "Thank you, second aunt." Seeing that Gu Huayu really liked her, Mrs. Jiang's eyes were full of smiles and she replied, "As long as Xiao likes her." Gu Huayu put her shoes back on, patted the dust on the soles, and held them in her arms like a baby. Zhang felt even better after seeing it. Wanji said, "Brother Liang, Xiao, you can take your brothers and sisters to play." Gu Huayu and Gu Chengliang bowed to the elders and left the room with Wan Wei and Wan Chen. Gu Huayu asked softly, "Brother, where are we going?" Gu Chengliang thought for a while and said, "It's cold and there's nothing fun outside. Let's go to the study." "Okay. Brother, please be careful, I'm a little bit naive, Gu Huayu said in a low voice. Gu Chengliang turned to look at Gu Huayu and asked, do you recognize life? He looked incredulous. Gu Huayu pulled Gu Chengliang's sleeve and lowered her voice, keep your voice down. It's not like I'm a stranger. I haven't seen him for a while. I just don't know what to talk about. Seeing that Gu Huayu was not pretending, Gu Chengliang said with relief, don't be nervous, I have my brother here. My brother and sister both like us very much. They get along very well. The two brothers and sisters took the Wan brothers and sisters to the study. As Gu Chengliang said, the Wan brothers and sisters were very easygoing and easy to get along with. In less than half an hour, Gu Huayu got along well with De Shuang and Xiao Shuang. She liked these two cousins who looked almost the same. Cousin, how can I tell who is the eldest sister and who is the second sister? Gu Huayu looked at the two and asked. Xiao Shuang smiled and pointed to the left side of her face, look here, when we laugh, my dimple is on the left and my sister's is on the right. Gu Huayu looked at the big pair, then at the little pair, and said, it's true. One's dimple is on the left, and the other's is on the right. Apart from that, is there anything else? The big pair and the little pair shook their heads at the same time. Xiao Shuang said, if we don't smile, it will be difficult for my parents to recognize us. Gu Huayu looked carefully and realized that these were the most similar twins she had ever seen. Brother Liang, the third aunt said that the older couple and the younger ones are here. Are they with Xiao? Do you know where they went? Gu Chengwan asked outside the door. Gu Huayu raised her voice and called out, second sister, we are in the study. Gu Chengwan pushed the door open and came in. Seeing all the brothers and sisters from the Wan family, she said with a smile, so you are in the study. I went to Xiao's room to look for you. The elder pair and the younger pair stood up to greet Gu Chengwan. After the two parties greeted each other, Gu Chengwan sat next to Gu Huayu and started chatting with the young and old. Gu Huayu sat on the edge and listened to their conversation, occasionally picking up a few words. Because there are many relatives staying over, there are not enough beds at home. At night, the big couple, the little couple, Gu Chengwan and Gu Huayu squeezed into one bed. The little girls were so excited that they chatted until midnight. Before any of them went to bed, Ms. Guan had already called at the door, Xiaowan, Xiao, get up quickly, we will be on the beam soon. Gu Chengwan turned over and sat up, raising her voice and responded, okay. Let's get up now. Gu Huayu followed and asked, didn't our family move to a new house? How come it's Shangliang? Gu Chengwan replied while putting on her clothes, because I didn't have a good schedule before, I left the main beam of the main house to fall down today and did it together with the housewarming. De Shuang and Xiao Shuang followed, let's watch the fun together. Several people went to the new house and saw people gathering in front of the hall and outside the house. Gu Chengwan pulled Gu Huayu and squeezed to the front of the main room. She looked up at the person sitting on the roof and whispered, this person is a feng shui master. He comes from the second sister-in-law's natal village. He is also named Wang. Whoever builds a house nearby will always know it. Ask him to read feng shui. Gu Huayu looked up at Master Wang and saw him sitting on the beam, holding a red silk ribbon in his hand. There was a large tray next to him, with a plate of pointed dumplings placed on the tray. Gu Difang sat on the other side and held the tray. Master Wang, the auspicious time has come, someone downstairs shouted. Master Wang began to mutter something, then he raised his hands and said a congratulatory message loudly, take a piece of damask from the master's house in your hand, 1 foot and 3 feet and 0, tie it 3 times on the left to increase wealth, and tie it 3 times on the right to enhance the Imperial Academy. The master's family will be prosperous, and the house will be filled with wealth and glory. Hold the cake in your hand and throw it to the east. The master will build a house and become a rich man. The old man will eat it and live a long life. The younger generation will pick it up and eat it and become a hero. After Master Wang said a bunch of auspicious words, he grabbed the glutinous rice on the tray and threw them down. People around him reached out to grab them. Gu Chengwan saw Master Wang throwing glutinous rice balls, put aside Gu Huayu's hand, and followed to grab them. Xiao, hurry up and grab it. Gu Huayu joined everyone in grabbing it. After the ceremony, Gu Chengwan ran over with a dumpling in one hand and said, Xiao, I picked up two. What about you? Did you pick them up? Gu Huayu opened the hem of her skirt and said, well, it's all here. Gu Chengwan looked down and her pupils were shocked. Wow, you picked up too much. That's amazing. Gu Chengwan was so excited that she bent down to help Gu Huayu count the ones she picked up. After a while, Gu Chengwan straightened up, gave a thumbs up to Gu Huayu and said, awesome, 16. Let's go to the kitchen, and let third aunt cook breakfast for us later. Gu Huayu followed Gu Chengwan and walked to the kitchen. Asked, second sister, from today onwards, we can live in a new house. Gu Chengwan nodded, yes, there is only one tile left in the main hall that is not covered. After it is covered and the grandfather moves into his house, the juniors can start moving. In fact, even if we move, there is nothing to move. Everything in the new house is new. There is no need to move anything in the old house, as long as people come over. This, Gu Huayu knew, it was her request to use new items in the new house. By the way, I heard from my second brother that there is still a theater troupe coming to sing today, Gu Chengwan said. After breakfast, let's go there early. I want to sit in the front row and watch the show. Can you accompany me? Gu Huayu nodded and said, okay. On this day, Gu Huayu accompanied Gu Chengwan to watch a day's play. Sending off neighbors near and far, the family tidied up for 2 days before tidying up the inside and outside of the home. Then, the family was busy making New Year's goods, and the family celebrated the New Year lively. On the night of the first day of the Lunar New Year, Gu Huayu told her family about going to Hongcheng. After hearing this, Gu Chengwan jumped up excitedly and asked, Xiao, can you take me with you? I want Hongcheng too. Ms. Fang raised her hand and patted Gu Chengwan, and said in a deep voice, sit tight. Gu Chengwan looked at everyone and sat down dejectedly. Gu Huaidong asked in confusion, okay, why do you want to go to Hongcheng? Gu Difang took the words and said, yes, why go to Hongcheng? How far is Hongcheng? Gu Dihe said, Xiao, Shishan is close to home, and shopkeeper Huang is here to help. But Hongcheng is too far? We are really not familiar with the place in Hongcheng. What if something happens? Gu Chennan nodded and said, Dad is right. Xiao, doing business is not easy. What happened before Rouge Shop should be taken as a warning. You and Lingear are both children. If you go to such a far place to do business, your family will be worried. Qin took the words and said, Xiao, Hongcheng is too far away, let's stay in Shishan. At least shopkeeper Huang is here in Shishan. Shopkeeper Huang? Shopkeeper Huang has long since fled to who knows where. Whether he can escape from the enemy's pursuit is still unclear, but you still expect him to protect us, Wang said sarcastically, holding her hands on her waist. Wang's words were like a bomb, which immediately stunned the whole family. You looked at each other, and I looked at you. After a long while, Ms. Jean said with a serious face, Xiui, where did you hear these words? Don't talk nonsense. Wang Xiui raised her head and snorted softly, talk nonsense? Auntie, I didn't talk nonsense. On the day of our housewarming and the banquet, my parents' family came over to have a drink. When everyone sat together and talked, they were talking about this matter. It just so happens that I have a cousin who owns a steamed bun shop in the county town, and the steamed bun shop is right across from Huangji. My cousin-in-law said that on the nights of the 18th and 19th, a group of people killed Huangji. They all looked fierce and carried 3-foot-long swords, and they slashed at anyone they saw. This incident caused a great stir. On the night of the 18th, even the people in the yamen were alerted. The group of people retreated only after seeing the yamen people. Tisk, 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 speaking of it, those people were simply desperados. Even the government offices were dispatched. On the night of the 19th, they still dared to come to the door. Shopkeeper Huang was beaten to the point where he could not return home, so he escaped with his people that night. Gu Huaidong looked at Gu Dichang, third brother. Did shopkeeper Huang really take people out of Shishan? Gu Dichang knew he couldn't keep it secret, so he nodded and said, yes, brother Huang is no longer in Shishan. So, what Jiui said is true. Who did shopkeeper Huang offend? The other party started such a big battle, Qin asked nervously. Gu Dichang was afraid that his family would misunderstand shopkeeper Huang, so he explained, brother Huang is not fleeing. Brother Huang left Shishan because of Wang Xianquan's intention, and Wang Xiancheng asked brother Huang to go out and take shelter. Brother Huang thought that he had not returned to his hometown to celebrate the New Year for many years, so he took this opportunity to go back to celebrate the New Year and pay homage to his ancestors. Mrs. Jean was still lingering on Wang Xiui's words and murmured, who did shopkeeper Huang offend? Let people chase him to the door and kill him. Brother Lin is in Hongcheng, will everything be okay? Everyone looked at Gu Huayu. Xiao, brother Lin. Gu Difang asked with worry on his face. Gu Huayu said, Uncle, mother, where did you think you were? Third brother is fine. Really, I promise. Guarantee? What guarantee do you have? Wang Xiui asked. Gu Jinnan saw Wang targeting Gu Huayu and quickly stood up to stop her. Xiui, you go back to the house and rest. Wang Xiui glared at Gu Jinnan, what time is it? You want me to go back and have a rest? You are always protecting Gu Huayu and don't want her to suffer any injustice. To do business, what kind of business do you want to do? You won't go home during the Chinese New Year? Let me tell you, brother Lin is probably in trouble. Gu Huayu just hid it from everyone. Wan stood up with a straight face and said angrily, Wang Xiui, you can eat randomly, but you can't talk nonsense. What kind of stupid words did you say during the New Year's Day? Do you believe I will slap you? Mr. Wan has been ill for many years. She can't even speak more than 2 sentences without getting out of breath. Therefore, Mr. Wan has never been talkative. The family had never seen Wan in a rage, and they were all intimidated by her aura. Wang Xiui shrank back in fear, but she didn't know how to restrain her mouth. What did I say? Isn't it true that the third uncle and shopkeeper Huang are friends? Don't you worry, the enemy can't find shopkeeper Huang, but they can find us. Come home. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 149. Chapter 149, Family Separation. Shut up. If you talk nonsense again, I'll beat you up. Gu Jinnan turned around and yelled at Wang Xiui. Wang's problem with speaking freely made him very distressed. You yell at me, you know how to yell at me, what I said is not the truth, huh? Tell me, if Xiaojiao hadn't gone to work in the shop, how could she have been put in jail? Didn't you know that Xiaojiao was imprisoned and suffered such a serious crime? The fingers are broken and the cross is connected to the heart. How painful it is. Wang Xiui fought back with her chest puffed out. You. Before Gu Jinnan finished speaking, Gu Huayu interrupted him. Second brother, please stop saying a few words. It's Chinese New Year. Everyone, please stop arguing. Sit down and speak slowly if you have anything to say. Gu Huayu lowered her face and said coldly. Wang glanced at Gu Huayu and straightened her back proudly, but did not sit down. Seeing that Gu Huayu was angry, Mrs. Wang comforted her and said, "Xiao." Gu Dichang said from the side, "Xiao Feng, whoever listens to the whisper should sit down first." Gu Huayu looked at Mrs. Wang and said warmly, "My mother, sit down." Wan Qi sighed and sat down. When Wang saw everyone looking at her, she snorted and sat down reluctantly. Gu Huayu saw everyone sitting down and was about to speak. Gu Dichang preceded her and bowed deeply to Gu Huaidong, stood up and said, "Dad, I will move out with my room tomorrow. From now on, the misfortunes and blessings of this house have nothing to do with the family." "Abba," Gu Huayu looked at Gu Dichang in shock. She didn't expect that her father would break up with the family for her sake. "Lao San! Lao San!" Gu Difang and Gu Dihe shouted at the same time in shock. Gu Dichang waved his hand to stop the two brothers. "Eldest brother, second brother, I have made up my mind, don't try to persuade me. Xiao, my father will handle this matter. You are a child, so don't get involved." Gu Dichang spoke to his two brothers first, and then spoke sternly to Gu Huayu. Wang Xiu's words made Mrs. Jean uneasy, and seeing Gu Dichang's attitude made her heart sink to the bottom. Jean asked, "Xiao, please tell me the truth. Is brother Lin okay?" Gu Huayu could understand a mother's concerns about her child, but Jean's attitude still made her feel a little uncomfortable. Gu Huayu stood up, bowed to Mrs. Jean, and asked, "Auntie, do you believe what I say?" Ms. Jean hesitated for a moment and met Gu Huayu's gaze. She felt alienated from Gu Huayu's gaze. Gu Chengjiao was so anxious that she squeezed the handkerchief in her hand and said, "Aniyang, you are confused. Xiao only wants to be good for this family and her brothers and sisters. How can you listen to a few gossips and then question them? This makes Xiao so sad. If Xiao hadn't come to the rescue, her daughter would have died in the Han family. What happened to my daughter before was still caused by the Han family and had nothing to do with Xiao. Moreover, the daughter was able to get out of the predicament only because Xiao, Huangbo and others tried their best to rescue her. You have watched Xiao grow up, so you should know how you treat your brothers and sisters. Lingir is the most friendly with Xiao. How could Xiao harm Lingir? How can I not believe Xiao?" Mrs. Jean came back to her senses, avoided Gu Huayu's gaze with evasive eyes, and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, it was my fault." Gu Huayu leaned forward and said calmly, "It doesn't matter. Don't worry, Auntie, third brother is fine. When Xiao arrives in Hongcheng, let third brother come back immediately." Ms. Jean lowered her head in embarrassment, "Thank you, Xiao." Gu Huayu didn't answer, turned around and sat back next to Wan. Gu Huaidong looked at Gu Dichang and asked, "Lao San, do you really want to take Sanfang out?" After Gu Dichang came back, he mentioned Huang Ji's matter to him. At that time, Gu Huaidong's mind was entirely on the new house and he did not listen to Gu Dichang's words. It's just a common dispute. People doing business are competing for interests. Where can I not meet a few enemies? But after listening to Wang's words today and looking at Lao San's attitude, Gu Huaidong realized that this matter was not simple. Based on his understanding of Lao San would not have said such a thing if the matter had not been too involved. Gu Dichang nodded and said, "It is a fact that my son has a good relationship with brother Huang. It is normal for Mrs. Wang to have such concerns. In order not to cause trouble to the family, it is better for me to move out of this room." Gu Chengjiao immediately said, "Third uncle, take your niece with you wherever you go, okay? My life was saved by Xiao. Wherever Xiao goes, I will follow." "Xiao Xiao, you." Qin said. "This." Gu Dichang spoke at the same time, but when Qin stopped him, he immediately stopped what he said and waited for Qin to continue. Gu Chengjiao didn't wait for Qin to speak, and then said, let's not say that Xiao saved my life. I am the only one who has returned to my parents' home with Li. If I stay at home, it will only make things difficult for my parents. People should know how to repay kindness. During the 6 months since I returned to my parents' home, Xiao tried his best to bring my body back to normal. She also taught me how to be self-reliant and self-reliant. Xiao has been very kind to me. I said that from now on, wherever Xiao is, I will follow him. Gu Difang sighed and asked, third brother, do you really want to move out? My father is still here, can the family be intact? Gu Dichang nodded, let's move out as soon as possible before everyone is separated. Gu Huaidong waved his hand and said, when a tree has big branches, people divide their families. It's better to separate them. You brothers have always been harmonious with each other, so we don't need to invite outsiders to the scene. We can all get our share, what do you think? The separation of the family during the New Year's Day is not a glorious thing to talk about. Everyone was shy and nodded in agreement. Gu Huaidong said, since there is no objection, then divide the existing house and fields at home into 4 parts. You 3 brothers, each of you will have 1 share, and the other one belongs to the 4th child. I will help the 4th child take care of it. One day when the 4th child comes back, he will also have a whereabouts. Gu Difang sighed and said, I don't have any objection to dividing it into 4 parts. My father is still here, so let's separate our families. Others will gossip. As the eldest son, Gu Difang naturally had more to consider. Wang Xiui muttered, it's better to let people gossip than to lose your life. Shut up, Gu Chennan shouted angrily at Wang Xiui. Fang took a look at Wang Xiui and took a daughter-in-law who didn't know the general situation, making her upset. Gu Dichang looked at Wang Xiui, and then at Gu Difang, brother, how can a person live without being talked about? The mouth is in other people's bodies. Whoever wants to talk, let him talk. What matters is that we live our own lives well. According to my father's words, the existing family property will be divided into 4 parts. Each of us 4 brothers will have 1 share. Big brother and second brother don't have any objections. Gu Dihei breathed out, glanced at Mr. Wang, nodded, and said solemnly, okay, I have no objection. Gu Dihei thought, it would be a good idea to divide it up. When his room is divided, he would divide Gu Chennan out another day. Seeing that his father and second brother agreed, Gu Difang could only nod, since you all agree to divide, let's divide. I am the eldest brother, and my father will follow me, and I will serve my father in this room. Gu Dichang bowed to Gu Difang, Mrs. Jean said, thank you for your hard work, brother and sister-in-law. Gu Difang waved his hand, turned to Gu Chengliang and said, brother Liang, go get pen, ink, and paper. Gu Chengliang stood up unhappily and went out to the study to get something. After a while, Gu Chengliang came back with a pen and ink and placed it heavily on the table. Gu Dichang looked at his son, ignored his little mood, and ordered, brother Liang, study ink. Gu Chengliang studied ink with a calm face. Gu Dichang said to everyone, list the land in your home according to distance and size. Then how will you divide it? By drawing lots. Everyone thought this was the fairest and nodded in agreement. Neither the Qin family nor the Fang family were serious people, so they quickly divided the fields. Then the houses, pigs, cattle, and horse pens are divided, and finally the existing grains, and poultry are divided. After everything was settled, Wang Xiui stood up and said, is this done? Where are the 2 shops in the city? Gu Dichang put down the pen in his hand, looked at Wang Xiui and said, the 2 shops in the city are both opened by Xiao. The family didn't contribute a single cent of silver, so why should they share it? Wang Xiui was dissatisfied and said, Xiao doesn't belong to this family. Her things don't belong to this family. Gu Huaidong patted the table and said solemnly, I have said before that Xiao's money belongs to her. Gu Dihe glared at Gu Chennan. Why don't you let her go back and rest? Gu Chennan reached out to pull Wang Xiui. Let's go back. Gu Huayu stood up and said coldly, wait a minute. Gu Chennan let go of his hand and turned to look at Gu Huayu. Xiao, is something wrong? Gu Huayu leaned against the square table and said, you guys sit down first, I have something to say. Everyone sat down one after another, and the room suddenly became quiet. Gu Huayu turned to look at Gu Difang and Qin, and asked first, Uncle, Aunt, if eldest sister follows us, will you feel relieved? Gu Difang looked at Gu Changqiao, saw his daughter's earnest eyes, nodded and said, of course I'm relieved. Gu Huayu looked at Mrs. Qin and asked, where is the eldest uncle? Ms. Qin hesitated for a moment, nodded and said, don't worry. Gu Huayu nodded, okay, since uncle and auntie can rest assured that the eldest sister will follow us, then we will take the eldest sister with us. After speaking, Gu Huayu turned to look at Wang Xiui and said, second sister-in-law really wants a shop in the city. Wang Xiui's face turned red with embarrassment when Gu Huayu exposed her thoughts in front of everyone. What I want about the shops in the city, I mean, those 2 shops should also be given out. Gu Huayu chuckled and asked, how come I didn't see you take out your dowry and share it? Wang Xiui stood up excitedly, why do I have to divide my dowry? Gu Huayu, you are really funny. By the way, your dowry is yours, the money I earned from buying ginseng is also mine, why should I share it? Ordinarily, this new house was built with the money I used to buy ginseng, and I have the right not to give it to you. If I don't let you live there, you have to go back to the old house. Do you understand? Gu Huayu smiled and spoke slowly. It's just something that doesn't know what's good or bad, Gu Chengwan responded. Wang Xiui's face turned red and she couldn't say a word. I didn't dare to say it. She had a vague feeling that if she dared to argue with Gu Huayu today, Gu Huayu would really drive her back to her old house. Gu Huayu looked at Wang Xiui and continued, the reason why I let you live here is not because your name is Wang Xiui, but because your man's name is Gu Chennan. For the sake of my second brother, I won't argue with you. If it weren't for my second brother, I wouldn't have given you even a single glance. Do you understand? Gu Huayu said while wagging her index finger. Wang Xiui has always felt that she is superior to Gu Chennan. In her mind, she was marrying low when she married into the Gu family. Now being despised by Gu Huayu, Wang Xiui was so angry that she said bluntly, if you have the ability, ask your second brother to divorce me. Gu Huayu raised her eyebrows and said, you think I don't dare? Wang Xiui, I'm going to say this here today. My second brother has divorced you. I will immediately ask someone to marry my second brother, a girl who is prettier and more sensible than you. Do you believe it or not? Everyone in the room was shocked by Gu Huayu's words. Wang Xiui looked at the crowd and saw that no one spoke for her. He sat down on the chair, cried and said, you bully others, your whole family bullies others. Everyone was brought back to their senses by Wang Xiui's cry, and wanted to persuade Gu Huayu, but they thought that Wang was usually messy and ignorant, and they wanted Gu Huayu to deal with her. So no one spoke to dissuade him. Gu Huayu looked at the rebellious Wang Xiui with contempt and said, bullying people? Yes, I'm bullying you. What do you want? What can you do? How about asking your second brother to send you back to your parents' home? Let me tell you, if you leave with the front foot, our second brother will take care of the concubine with the back foot. Wang Xiui howled, you shameless thing, look at the world, how can a sister-in-law interfere with the relationship between a brother and a sister-in-law? As a younger sister, you are trying to trick someone into your brother's house. You have disgraced the Gu family. Gu Huayu sneered and said, if you want to use your reputation to decide things, just say it, I don't care. Gu Changjiang took the words and said, Wang Xiui, if you dare to go out and talk nonsense, I will tear your mouth to pieces. Look at you, what did you marry back? Gu Chengjiang glared at Gu Chennan. Gu Chennan stood up and pulled Wang Xiui, let's go back. If I don't go back, don't even think about divorcing me, Wang Xiui replied immediately. Wang Xiui couldn't get up from the chair, and Gu Chennan didn't dare to exert any force, so he had to let her sit. Second brother is going to divorce her, and our family will be safe, Gu Chengwan blurted out. Fang raised her hand to Gu Chengwan and said, shut up, what's the matter with you? Gu Huayu looked at Wang Xiui, who was covering her face and crying, and ignored her. She turned around and said to everyone, Sister and Li are back, the road ahead will be difficult. The rouge shop, I originally prepared it for my eldest sister, so that she could have the ability to gain a foothold in the world. Since the eldest sister wants to follow me, I will leave the shop to the second sister and make a dowry for the second sister in the future. Xiao, I don't want a shop, and I want to follow you. I am the same as the elder sister. I will follow you wherever you go. You are my master, you can't leave your apprentice and go on your own, right? Gu Chengwan said immediately. After saying that, Gu Chengwan took Fang's arm and shook it. Auntie, let me be with third uncle and the others, okay? My daughter, I beg you. Okay. I want to be with Xiao and learn my skills from Xiao, so that I won't be bullied by others in the future. Fang looked at Gu Dihei, this. Gu Dihei already liked Gu Huayu, and Gu Huayu's performance today impressed him even more. Said, Xiao Wan and Xiao are good friends, let her go. It will only cause trouble for Lao San and Xiao Feng. End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 150. Chapter 150 Family Separation 2. Hey, Gu Chengwan jumped up excitedly, rushed towards Gu Dihei, and turned Brother Sui around, and Gu Chengdong scooped Brother Sui into his arms with his quick eyes and hands. Gu Chengwan grabbed Gu Dihei's arm and shook it, Dad, you are the best. Fang pulled Gu Chengwan over and scolded him, you almost knocked Brother Sui down just now, why are you always so reckless? How can I let you out without worry? Gu Chengwan apologized and said to Guan, Sister-in-law, I'm sorry, I was so happy just now. Guanxi smiled and said, it's okay, second aunt, don't scold Xiao Wan. Gu Chengwan turned to Mrs. Wan and said flatteringly, third uncle and three aunt, I am very diligent and I promise not to cause any trouble to you. Wanqi glanced at Gu Huayu and said, I don't have any objection. I'm just looking at Xiao. Gu Chengwan walked to Gu Huayu and acted coquettishly, Xiao, you can't leave me behind. Let me join you, okay? I promise to listen to you. Okay. When Gu Chengwan acts coquettishly, she likes to hold other people's hands and shake them. Gu Huayu was shaken unsteadily by her. He raised his hand and took Gu Chenjuan's hand, okay, I'll take you with me. Go back and sit down, I have something else to say. Seeing Gu Huayu nodding in agreement, Gu Chengwan excitedly picked her up and spun her around, thank you, Xiao, eldest sister, we can be together. Gu Chengjiao smiled and nodded, hurry up and sit down and listen to Xiao. Gu Chengwan sat back obediently. Gu Huayu continued, since the second sister is coming with us, the rouge shop will be given to the second aunt. Whether the second aunt will take care of it herself or rent it to others is up to her. Fang was lowering his head to peel the peanuts. Hearing Gu Huayu's words, he was so shocked that he dropped the peanut kernels to the ground. He stared at Gu Huayu blankly for a long time before saying, Xiao, that shop is not small. Not only Fang was surprised, everyone in the room looked at Gu Huayu in shock. That rouge shop is not just a front door, it is a shop with a backyard, and it is also the busiest and most prime location in Xishan. Gu Dihei builds and builds houses for people, and he knows housing prices best. When the rouge shop opened, he went to the city to see it and estimated that if he bought the shop, he would need 600 to 700 taels of silver. Later he asked shopkeeper Huang, who told him that the shop cost 750 taels of silver. It cost nearly 900 taels of silver to buy it and decorate it. The child gave it away as soon as he said he would. Gu Huayu smiled and replied, "It's not that big. I consider you my niece to be filial to you." Mrs. Fang said, "What? It's not like you won't come back when you go out. You can keep it and use it as a dowry in the future. Or leave it to your mother-in-law, brother Liang and the others." Gu Huayu said with a smile, "Second uncle, don't worry, just accept it with peace of mind. I will not wrong my mother and brother." Fang responded, "Thank you, Xiao." Gu Huayu looked at Gu Difang and said, "Give me the plum garden and 6 shop to my uncle." "What, Miwen?" Everyone looked at Gu Huayu in shock. "What? Miwen, doesn't Miwen belong to shopkeeper Huang?" Gu Chengdong asked first. Gu Huayu shook her head and said truthfully, "No, both Miwen and Zhuangzi belong to me. It was the young master who treated me last time who paid me the consultation fee." Wang Xiui was so upset that she wanted to die. If she had known this, she would not have rolled her eyes at Gu Huayu, nor would she have faced her if he had beaten her to death. "Oh, so that's it." Gu Huaidong suddenly realized it and recalled what happened before, finally thinking about it. Gu Huayu continued, "As for Zhuangzi, I'll leave it to the fourth and fifth brothers. I've finished my words." Wang Xiui saw that Gu Huayu didn't share anything with her, so she raised her voice and asked, "Why did Miwen and 6 shop go to the uncle's hands, while Zhuangzi gave it directly to brother Zhang and brother Zi? Is this fair to you?" Everyone has a clear mind about Gu Huayu's classification, and naturally understands Gu Huayu's intention. But what everyone didn't expect was that Wang Xiui would question Gu Huayu in public. Gu Chengliang couldn't bear it and stood up and said bluntly, "I'm afraid the second sister-in-law has forgotten that these properties are small talk. Xiao's own things, who she wants to give them to is her preference, how can it be fair?" Wang Xiui put her hands on her hips and said fiercely, "We are all brothers, everyone has a share, but Gu Chennan doesn't have one. What does Gu Hua mean? She looks down on Gu Chennan and doesn't regard Gu Chennan as her brother. Second sister-in-law, you can't make false accusations. Big brother, third brother, and I don't have this either." Gu Chenggui stood up and said. "Which one is the same? You." Before Wang Xiui finished speaking, Gu Chennan said angrily, "Haven't you made enough trouble? Go back." Wang Xiui saw that Gu Chennan was angry, so she didn't dare to speak anymore and sat down on the group chair. Gu Chennan gritted his teeth, glanced at Wang Xiui, and sat down silently. The atmosphere in the room became dull. Gu Dichang said twice, "I will also put my family property with my eldest brother. Please help me take care of it." Gu Dichang handed the list in his hand to Gu Difang. Gu Difang took the order, handed it to Gu Chengdong, and said, "Go and copy one copy, let's keep one copy, and your third uncle will take one copy." Gu Chengdong nodded in agreement. Gu Huaidong asked, "When are you leaving? What about brother Liang's studies? How to arrange it? Otherwise, let brother Liang stay." Gu Dichang thought for a while and said, "No, brother Liang will go with us. When we settle down, we will find a school for brother Liang. Before that, brother Liang will study by himself at home." Gu Huaidong nodded, "That's fine. After we decide, I'll find a way to send a message home." Gu Dichang nodded in agreement. "Everyone, be quiet," Gu Huaidong said in a loud voice. The room immediately fell silent, and everyone turned to look at Gu Huaidong. Gu Huaidong looked around at everyone and said sternly, "Now that the family is divided, it will be easy to live a good life in the future. Also, don't mess around with family matters. A few adults will stay, and the rest will go back and rest first." Wang Xiui walked out quickly with a big belly. Gu Chennan called from behind, "Slow down. Wang Xiui pretended not to hear and left the hall without looking back. Mrs. Fang sighed and told Gu Jinnan, hurry up and take a look. You are about to give birth. Don't make any mistakes. Gu Jinnan nodded and quickly followed out. Gu Chengwan said to Gu Huayu, Xiao, are we leaving early tomorrow morning? I'm going to pack things. Gu Huayu nodded, go. Brother Sui stepped forward and took Gu Huayu's hand, raised his head and asked, sister-in-law, can Brother Sui come with you? Gu Huayu knelt down, pinched Brother Sui's face, and asked with a smile, what? Brother Sui wants to join my sister-in-law. Brother Sui didn't even think about it, he nodded immediately and said, I think so. Gu Huayu said sternly, if Brother Sui is with my sister-in-law, he cannot be with my father and mother-in-law. In this case, does Brother Sui still want to be with my sister-in-law? Brother Sui's expression immediately became tangled. He thought about it awkwardly and said, Brother Sui is still with a Niang. Seeing that Brother Sui was about to cry, Gu Huayu wiped his tears for him and comforted him in a warm voice, Brother Sui, eat well at home and listen to my mother-in-law. When Brother Sui grows up, my sister-in-law will come to Brother Sui. Okay. Brother Sui nodded and said, my sister-in-law still wants to pick up my father and mother. Gu Huayu nodded and said, okay, I'll take it up with your father and mother as well. Brother Sui said very seriously, sister-in-law, you must keep your word. Gu Huayu nodded seriously, well, keep your word. Then pull the hook. Brother Sui stretched out his hand to hook up with Gu Huayu. Come on, your sister-in-law has promised you, Guan said from the side. Gu Huayu stretched out her hand and shook hands with Brother Sui. Don't worry. Mrs. Guan smiled and took her son's hand, I'm satisfied now. Let's go back. Brother Sui waved to Gu Huayu reluctantly, sister-in-law, my mother and I are back. Gu Huayu smiled and said, go. Gu Huayu left the main room and walked along the corridor to the backyard. Passing by Gu Jinnan and Wang's house, she heard Wang's crying and cursing. You are just a loser. Don't you treat her well? You think about her everything. How could she ever have you in her heart? For such a big village, she only gave it to Gu Chengjiang and Gu Jinzi, but did she ever give you an acre and a half? Are you eating less and wearing less clothes now? Are you fighting for everything? That's Xiao's thing. She can give it to whoever she wants. What are you making a fuss about? What do you have to make a fuss about? Gu Jinnan said calmly replied. Is this a matter of eating less and wearing less? You have to ask Gu Huayu in front of everyone, will she give it to you? Is she embarrassed not to give it to you? Wang Xiui said without giving in. Gu Jinnan didn't answer. Wang Xiui then scolded, you are just a stupid donkey, a brainless thing. Have you scolded enough? Stop scolding enough. If you haven't scolded enough, continue scolding. I'm sleepy, so I'll take a rest, Gu Jinnan said. Wang Xiui's voice sounded again, how could I marry a piece of wood like you? Get out of here, I'll get angry just looking at you. Okay, I'll leave without disturbing your eyes. Gu Jinnan opened the door and came out. There was a clang in the room, followed by Wang Xiui's cry. Gu Huayu leaned on the wooden pillar, looking at Gu Jinnan standing at the door and sighing. Gu Jinnan looked up and saw Gu Huayu not far away, rubbed his hands awkwardly, and then walked towards Gu Huayu. Xiao, Wang's temperament is like this, don't be angry, Gu Jinnan said sheepishly. Gu Huayu shook her head and said, second brother, let's talk. Gu Jinnan nodded. Gu Huayu looked around and said, it's cold outside, go to my yard. Okay, Gu Jinnan responded. The two brothers and sister went to Gu Huayu's yard one after the other. Entering the room, Gu Huayu poured a cup of tea for Gu Jinnan and said, second brother, sit down. Gu Jinnan sat down. Neither brother nor sister spoke. Second brother. The two of them said at the same time. Gu Chennan smiled and said, Xiao, you speak first. Gu Huayu looked up at Gu Chennan and asked directly, second brother, I didn't give you anything, do you blame me? Gu Chennan shook his head, I don't complain. Xiao, don't listen to Wang's nonsense. Wang, like her mother, has a narrow vision and loves to take advantage. Gu Huayu said, I understand. Second brother, if Wang is like this, are you willing to live with her for the rest of your life? Gu Chennan sighed and said, we are already married, and the child is about to be born. What's the use of thinking about it? Is it possible to really divorce her? If you divorce her, what will happen to the child? Gu Huayu put down the teacup in her hand and said disapprovingly, have you ever thought about what kind of children Wang will teach them? Wang's mother was selfish and had a narrow vision, and she taught Wang to be like this. What about the Wang family? Second brother, can you trust her to teach the children? Gu Chennan fell into silence. After a long time, he said, what should we do? She is the mother of the child. When the child is born, she can't help but discipline it, right? Gu Huayu said, your child, you should think about this problem carefully. Gu Chennan was silent again, rubbing his temples with a headache. After a long time, Gu Huayu said, second brother, think about it carefully. I will leave 500 taels of silver with the second aunt. This silver is for the second brother. If the second brother wants to use the silver, he can just ask the second aunt to get it. Gu Chennan waved his hands repeatedly and said, Xiao, I have everything at home and don't need much money. You are out there and there are many places that need money. It's always good for you to bring more money with you. The second brother said, it's all true, listen to my second brother. Gu Huayu smiled and nodded, well, of course I know that second brother is telling the truth. Second brother, don't worry, I have arranged everything. Xiao, Ms Wang is afraid she's going to give birth, she's crying so loudly in the room, go over and have a look. Gu Chengwan ran in. Second brother, you are here, everyone is looking for you everywhere. After hearing this, Gu Chennan immediately got up and walked out. Gu Huayu also followed him out and asked as he walked, have you seen red? Why do you see red? Gu Chengwan asked confusedly. Only then did Gu Huayu realize that Gu Chengwan didn't understand anything. Come on, it's nothing, I'll go take a look. Gu Huayu quickened her pace. As soon as Gu Chennan entered the house, Ms Jean turned around to see him and immediately kicked him out. Brother Nan, what are you doing in here? Get out quickly. Gu Chennan looked at Ms Wang, who was lying on the bed crying, and asked in confusion, Uncle, Ms Wang. Women are like this when they give birth, you can't help here, so get out quickly. I asked Brother Zhang to go to Shuibian village to invite Po Yang Wen. You go and welcome Po Wen. Qin ordered. After hearing Qin's words, Gu Chennan gradually calmed down, nodded in agreement, turned around and left the room, and bumped into Gu Huayu, who entered the room. Gu Huayu asked, second brother, how is it? Gu Chennan was in a hurry to meet Po Wen, and hurriedly walked out. As he walked, he said, I'm afraid she's going to give birth, so I'll go meet Po Wen. Gu Huayu stepped into the house. When Wan saw her, she immediately said, Xiao, get out quickly, this is not the place you should be. Gu Huayu didn't listen to Wan's words and continued walking inside. Let me see how the second sister-in-law is doing. Although Gu Huayu didn't like the Wang family, she was unambiguous when it came to big things. After all, giving birth to a child in this era is like going to hell. Seeing that Gu Huayu did not leave, but instead walked in, Fang stopped her and said, Xiao, get out quickly. You are a girl and you shouldn't be here. Gu Huayu looked at Ms Wang, who was lying on the bed crying non-stop, and asked, did the second sister-in-law fall? Guan Shi nodded, I was washing Brother Sui's feet. When I went out to pour the foot washing water, I heard Shiui crying in the room. I quickly put down the basin and came over. When I entered the room, I saw Shiui sitting on the ground crying. I didn't know until I asked her. It fell. End of this chapter.